Hey guys, it's FSX23. Trying out another hangout. Basically, want to talk about more issues with science. So that'd be evolution, the age of the Earth, the Great Flood. Some of the issues I have bigger problems with Christians. So I just kind of put this hangout out of nowhere. So the last one did pretty well. Hopefully, some people join in here in a minute. But until then, it'll just be me staring at myself. Hey guys, it's FS63. Trying out another hangout. And I have my speakers on. And they're off. Alright, so I sent out some invites to some Christians. Hopefully a couple of them will join. I think they will. I think a lot of people are eating dinner right now, but I'm in Colorado, so it's only 6 o'clock. This is probably a better time for everyone else. It's probably like around 7 or 8. And I'm trying a new setup here. I'm using my desktop monitor as opposed to just my laptop, so hopefully I'll be able to look at comments and whatnot. And hopefully someone will join in here in a second. Or I'll just delete this off my channel and pretend like this never happened. But I got some information on myiacids, which are basically the common ancestor of cats, dogs, and bears. And I think this was a big issue last time on our discussion. And I also did a little more research on viruses, ERVs, pseudogenes. So if we have an evolution discussion today, hopefully it'll go a little better. And now that I'm running into monitors, aside from the fact that I constantly look to the side, I'll be able to do research a little more seamlessly as opposed to before. But I've been on here for about 2 minutes, and it looks like, 90 seconds. And I got 3 viewers. So if anyone wants to jump on here, there's a link in the Google chat, and there's also a link on the page. So just click that link, and you can jump in here. If you know any Christians you think might want to join in, go ahead and send them a link, and hopefully we can have a pretty good discussion. I think last time I did this, I had Veckel on. I really enjoyed talking to Veckel. I invited MG Pillbox. Maybe seeing that I'm in control of the hangout, things may be a little more less chaotic with MG Pillbox. So, but if anyone gets out of hand, I can kick them. So who cares? And at 2 minutes, I'm up to 6 viewers, and no one has joined in here. So if you guys want to join in here, do that at any time. Like I said, there's a link on the YouTube page, and there's also a link if you're in this direct hangout. And if you know anyone else who wants to join, feel free to add them on. Like I said, kind of with all my hangouts, I kind of do these out of the blue, so I don't really plan ahead. So I'm ready to talk to anybody. Oh, I'm up to 7 viewers at 3 minutes. So I'm impressed. I'm very impressed. And you can see on the screen, you can totally see the delay. There's like a 20-second delay between what I'm saying and what I'm seeing. Like I said again, I've got a link up here on the YouTube page if anyone wants to jump in here. And like I said, the main topics, basically evolution, age of the Earth, Great Flood. I'm kind of looking at those type of topics because those seem like the most interesting to me and probably the most interesting to you. But I'm always down to talk about the Bible because I guess that's fun. I'm just not the biggest Bible expert. That's why I try to stick with what I know, which is that kind of stuff. Oh, you guys can see a different angle of my room. So right up here, you can see I have a periodic table on my wall, which shows how fucking dorky I am. And I've got some Da Vinci over, where's my finger? Right there. That's Da Vinci. And I don't only have a German flag. You can see I have a Nigerian flag too, which is super cool. And there's wicked sun glare behind me. But I guess you can see my face, so that's all that matters. And like I said, there's a link in the comment section on Google. Let me double check to make sure that even works. That doesn't work. Oh, crap. I think I put the wrong link up there, which would explain why no one is in here. All right, so I'm going to get another link up here in like 1 second. Got to get my cursor over to the right screen. All right, links, link, YouTube page, video embed. Let's try it again. All right. See, this is a professional operation I got going on here. Is that the same thing? I think that's the same thing. Same. I think that's the right link. Oh, maybe it's the event page. No. Video embed. I think that's the right one. Well, if I have the wrong link, someone can go ahead and send me a message on YouTube and tell me I'm an idiot and that I put the wrong link on here. But hopefully, last time it only took about 5 minutes to get someone on here. And then we had a full room pretty soon after that. Let me try this. Alright. No, that's a video embed. No, I think this is the right link. Let me try again. Whatever. I posted it twice, so no one can miss it. I got 15 people watching, and no one is joining me. They're just letting me suffer all by myself. It's so sad. Let's try refreshing this. Again, I got a link up on YouTube, and I'm looking to talk about evolution, the Great Flood, all that fun stuff. 14. I got 2 pluses. There we go. It's the wrong link. Fucking A, it is the wrong link. Okay, thank you, Sasha G. How the fuck is that the wrong link? Oh, why don't I just do this? I'm a computer dork. I'll figure this out. Let's try that one. Alright, let's test it. That's the right one. I have the right. And there we go. Alright. So sorry, I'm a complete idiot. I put the wrong link, but I fixed it. And it should be on the top one. I will put a little marker that says this is the correct link. Alright. Okay. Alright, so on the YouTube page, I have the correct link on there now. And I will put it in the Hangout as well. So I thought it was strange. I went 6 whole minutes without anyone jumping in here. And I had 18 viewers. What are the odds of that? I mean, I can't be that retarded, can I? Oh, I got someone on here. How's it going?
Good. How's with you?
Oh, pretty good. Just
Good to
killing
hear.
some time.
Good to hear. Killing some time, huh?
Yeah, that's right.
They can't
Yeah.
see it. No one can see that chat. Why are you posting it there?
Some people click the link for the Google Hangout, and some people are on the YouTube page.
Ah.
So yeah, hopefully I'll get a Christian in here or someone else. I'm not really sure who you are, what your background is.
You what?
Are you a Christian, atheist?
Well, I've been bouncing between atheism and deism for the last couple of months, but I bet I generally relate more with atheists than theists.
Okay. So, what is your position on evolution, the age of the Earth, the Great Flood?
Well, it doesn't really matter what my position on evolution is. It doesn't make it not true if I don't believe in it. So,
That's true. I think it's an interesting discussion, though. So, that's kind of
yeah.
mainly what I've been talking about the last few days.
I believe the Earth is like 4.5 to roughly 4.5 billion years old.
That sounds like about a pretty good estimate. All right, and if anyone's watching, I got a link up there. So hopefully this room will be filled pretty quickly. Last time, once people started coming in, it filled up in about 10 minutes. So
I'm
it
actually
should.
gonna sorry there.
What's that?
I was about to directly send Nadia the link. She asked me specifically for it. Well, she didn't ask me specifically. She asked for the link specifically.
Okay. Yeah, it's public, so anyone who has it, they can send it out to whoever.
Okay.
Preferably some young Earth creationists because they're the fun ones.
Yeah. I gave Nephilim the problem of superposition, and basically what I said is like we've never found this type of dinosaur and this type of dinosaur together, and you're saying they lived at the same time. And he was like, "Oh, that's just luck." And that was basically his explanation for superposition. So those tens of thousands of fossils or hundreds of thousands, just all very lucky.
When did you have a discussion with Nephilim?
2 days ago, I believe it was.
Okay. Yeah, he's been talking to me. He wants to have a debate, so hopefully I'll be able to set something up with him, I guess. But I mean, normally the argument I've heard mostly from creationists when it comes to that is that scientists are basically lying, and if they find a out of place fossil, that we make some kind of excuse to justify why these fossils don't line up. He just joined. DJ Arm 67.
Yep. How you doing?
I'm doing wonderful. How are you?
Yeah, good.
And I think I've talked to you before. What's your background?
I used to be a leader in a fundamentalist Pentecostal church a few years ago. Then became an atheist, and been one ever since, I guess.
Okay, awesome. And where you calling in from?
Australia.
Awesome. I'm planning on going to Australia next year, so I'm
Cool.
super
What
excited.
part?
I don't know quite yet. I'm trying to find one of those vacation packages where they take you to Australia, Tasmania, and New Zealand.
Oh yeah.
So hopefully, probably somewhere coastal. I'm assuming because I only have a week to work with.
Oh, okay. That's probably not enough because it's huge.
Yeah, but Australia and Madagascar are probably the two places on Earth I'm the most excited about.
Mm.
Just because they've been isolated for such a long time, the animals and the plant life is just so much more diverse there than what I'm used to.
Yeah. Well, we're predominantly lizards and parrots and marsupials.
Yep. And I also want to see, I've always wanted to see stromatolites, and I think if I take my girlfriend, she's going to think I wasted our time to go out and stare at stromatolites, but they are.
Well, that's almost a week's trip on its own because that's right over on the northwest, like the living stromatolites, over on the north of Western Australia.
Yeah. I mean, I don't have anything planned yet, but it's kind of in the works. I have a year to figure out how I'm going to get this to work, so I might just go straight to that spot just to see some rocks with some mold on it. But all right, who else do we have? I have Nadia. Everybody knows Nadia. And what's this? Run Gav something?
Gavagai.
Gavagai. All right, so I know Nadia's background. She's an atheist. What's your background?
Me?
Yeah.
I'm a former Christian, but I'm an atheist now.
Cool. Awesome. Yeah, so I'm hoping to get a Christian on here pretty soon. I think one of the arguments they've been bringing up a lot recently, and I've had trouble addressing, is the just the suggestion that there's no information added to the genome. So I think I have a good way of addressing that if any of them jump on here. It's more or less saying like you're using the same letters in the alphabet to create new words, and suggesting these new words are just old information. They're not new information.
There's also an argument from Shannon Entropy that information actually varies without necessarily radically altering the genome. I mean, for instance, flipping around a couple of base pairs can, well, incrementally increase information.
Right. Yeah, and the thing is, whenever we bring that up, it's normally if there's something where they're saying that's a loss of information, so that's not new information, or what else do they say?
No, that's not the counter argument at all. They deny that Shannon entropy is a valid quantification of information, and say that it has to do with some kind of, I guess, very fuzzy, foggy, ill-posed conceptual novelty, I suppose. So, you know, you don't have like I don't know, horses evolving horns or something like that for unicorns.
Shannon, and what was the name of that word you used? Entropy?
Shannon entropy, yes. Shannon, like S-H-A-N-N-O-N, and entropy, and that's the usual way to quantify the information in a message.
Oh, okay. I'll be honest, I've actually never heard that before, so that's a new one for me. Is that just like information science, or? Oh, shit.
Yeah, it's information theory, yeah.
Oh, I got you. All right. Who else just jumped in here? BMT?
Burleman Trucker.
Burleman Trucker. Oh, he just jumped out. Oh, man, I was excited about Burleman Trucker.
You scared him away.
God damn it. I mean, gosh darn it.
So, what would be, I guess, the principal claims to, well, try to defend and address here? Things like specifically the age of the Earth, going on about like radioactive decay for determining the age and such, or?
Yeah, the thing is, I haven't really heard a lot of Christians bring up these arguments recently, and I've noticed that people are starting to talk about evolution and other things, and they're starting to give up on this whole presuppositionalist argument, and you can't know anything. So now that we're able to have a real conversation again, I think these are good things to bring back up. Yeah, the age of the Earth is a great one. I know a lot of the arguments Kent Hovind used to do, suggesting that there's no way to establish a measurement of, there's no way to establish a measurement of time. I just lost my concentration, sorry.
Yeah.
Kent Hovind normally said that there's no way to tell like that the radioactive decay is constant, that we are just assuming this is true and it could change over time. I think that's the biggest argument against radioactive decay. I've heard other arguments where they say the moon would be touching the Earth or something 8,000 years ago if the Earth was this young. I've heard a lot of kind of arguments that I like to see.
That's just bad math.
Yeah.
Well, furthermore, the moon is actually falling inward toward the Earth. It'll be further away.
Well, the moon is receding from the Earth.
It is? Oh,
yeah.
Dear.
Yep.
But they're just pretending like this is constant accelerate, like it's just moving at a constant rate as opposed to logarithmically moving away from the Earth. So it was moving away at a slower rate in the past, and it's moving away at a faster rate now. But they use just basic math saying like, well, if it's moving at the speed it's moving now, it'd be touching the Earth, a million years ago or something that would disqualify evolution.
Yeah.
But
the orbital mechanics there make particular predictions that can, well, falsify those claims. However, I'm not entirely privy to them. So should be brought up at some point, or researched.
And like I said, the reason I'm on YouTube is because of Kent Hovind. So most of my creationist arguments are coming from Kent Hovind. So, and I'm guessing they have not changed one bit since then. But if there's a theist out there who wants to prove me wrong, by all means, jump in here and let me know. And someone just joined the room. Who is it?
Lyrical Orion.
Is that how you pronounce it?
How's it going? Yeah, I was just watching Cosmos about the age of the Earth, so I wanted to jump in because it was just kind of funny. Because I mean, with I don't know, just certain aspects of science, certain aspects of just understanding and looking at it, the information that we have available to us right now, the fact that we still argue with certain religious people about these issues, it boggles my mind, because I've been in a couple discussions with Pillbox and different people, so it's kind of crazy.
Yeah, and I was listening to an interview with one of the main producers for Cosmos, and they basically said that there is a lot more opposition today against a lot of the things Cosmos presents than there was back in the 70s, I guess it'd be early 80s. They said back then there was really no controversy at all, and now there's this huge controversy over Cosmos, which I can understand to a certain degree, because I think this one's a little more explicitly critical to the church than the old one. But
I think they take a little more jabs. I mean, I've kind of noticed it a couple times. Yeah.
I mean, that said, I think they also highlight the fact that a lot of religious leaders are responsible for a lot of scientific discoveries, and I think it's an honest look.
It really, I mean, a lot of the people that do really support the Christian viewpoint will say things like, when it comes to the face of science, they'll say things like, well, it was because of the Roman Catholic Church, or they'll point the finger at certain people, but they won't see that their religion in and of itself was sort of like, they still subscribe to it. Do you know what I mean? And their viewpoints are still sort of the same. They're very limiting. They're like, well, if it doesn't fit with dogma, then it's not true until it's proven to be true. And then they're like, well, okay, I guess that might be sort of true. A great example of that was like Galileo and all these scientists that were basically condemned by the church, but later on were proven to be true. How can a church that condemns people, be in that are false, be a correct church? I mean, Christians need to look at that.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's a criticism of the Catholic Church, but it's also one thing I kind of like about it is they are blatantly willing to just change their philosophy on a whim, and I guess it's a good thing and a bad thing at the same time. I mean, I'd rather these religious groups be a little more liberal, a little more moderate. It's not so much important to me that they completely reject their beliefs in God, and if they can at least come to a position that's at least tenable to a great degree with reality, I don't mind it so much.
Well, the problem is, even Christians that do believe in evolution, even the ones that actually do hold to science, that leaves even more questions, because are they looking at Genesis as a metaphor? Are they looking at it, if they're not looking at it as a metaphor, then do they actually think that Adam and Eve's parents might have been hominids to some point? It gets really mind-boggling, because yeah. Yeah,
I mean, and Benaberry, I saw your questions on here. I have that question app open, so if anyone wants to ask questions, I can read them on the screen. But
All for His Glory Alone is commenting in the event page that he wants an invite in. He's a Christian.
Tell him if he goes to my YouTube page, there's links on that. If anyone on here wants to send him a link, or I don't really know where he is, so I don't know if I want to go and try to search for him. I'm trying to figure out how to control all this stuff. I'm getting a little better at it. But to respond to Laia Chlorian, God, I thought FSX 23 was hard for people to say.
Lyrical Orion.
Lyrical Orion.
Leah Chlorion. Oh my gosh. Anyway, as far as I know, the Catholics more or less have said that like Homo habilis, one of the older hominids was the first human. They just kind of arbitrarily cut a line off and say this is the first hominid, which is very inventive. But I mean,
Right. This was, yeah, exactly. They drew the line. They were just like, okay, that's, Australopithecus cannot be the first hominid. No, it has to be this particular hominid because it has more human-like characteristics. No, it's bizarre because the first human was Adam, in their opinion. So it's very, very controversial because they don't really follow the same guidelines all the time. They're flip-flopping all over the place.
All right, so I'm going to answer Benaberry's 2 questions. He saw my periodic table, which is up there. So he asked what my favorite element is and why. So that'd be carbon, just because you can bond to 4 different elements, and it can make complicated structures. And without carbon, who knows if we'd even exist? And he asked why is my periodic table so high? Am I that tall? I'm 6'3", so I don't know if that's tall or not. So that answers his 2 questions, and we can get back to evolution.
No, you're short.
Oh, yes. So I totally derailed it there for a second. Yeah, and the Catholic Church, I also find it funny how they can excommunicate people, and then later on be like, oh, we take it back. So what happened to these people the last 500 years where they kind of hang out in hell, and then some angel came by and picked them up, decided, oh no, it's all right now.
Oh no, Nephilim explained hell to me. He's an expert.
All right, how did Nephilim explain hell?
Well,
someone should send a link to Nephilim. I don't know if he's on Google Plus or not, but
I'll open Skype and see if he's online.
Sure.
But yeah, it basically explained it like this: like people are gonna suffer for a little while, and then be completely destroyed. That's the end of it.
Okay, so it's just like a timeout. It's not really a burning for.
But then you're like obliterated. So.
I mean, to be honest, I would honestly rather be obliterated. I mean, I struggle. This was one of the reasons I became an atheist. I struggled with this concept of living for eternity. I mean, be it heaven or hell, it's going to get old. It's going to get boring towards the end, no matter how cool it is. And I don't see how. Exactly. Yeah, Mark Twain said, infinity is a long time, especially towards the end. And I don't see how this doesn't bother Christians who honestly believe they're going to be existing and thinking for eternity. That sounds like worse than hell.
I argue the same point with them. Oh my God, eternity sounds like hell, right? Like, do you really want to praise? I mean, do you know how much Christians hate going to church, right? Like secretly, they hate going to church.
I don't know about that.
But even when I was a Christian, you did kind of. It was kind of like a burden to certain extents, like having to get up and go, and do these different types of things. But praising God and stuff is still considered like the most glorious thing that you can do if you're a Christian. But Mark Twain, exactly. I have letters. Oh gosh, I have that one book from Mark Twain. It's like Letters from the Ends of the Earth, or what was it called? But anyway, where he talks about basically the God perspective from Lucifer's. Perspective, which is really interesting, where basically he's basically saying Lucifer is talking about the earth, and he's saying, how could Christians even want to praise God forever? Do they even understand what that means to praise God forever? That's almost hell in and of itself, especially because Christians, a lot of them, don't even consider there to be an increase or any more development at that point. It's almost like an end to everything. It's just like this blissful state, and they don't consider it to be anything more than that. And that is almost a hell in and of itself.
I know, that's what I've always thought. I'm thinking towards 500 trillion years. I think heaven and hell are approaching the same value of pure misery, just coming from a different direction. But JD's in here. I love JD.
Oh no.
Yeah.
And everybody else.
Hello.
All right.
I
And,
was,
We've got the good
doing
and the evil JD in here.
I was,
Got the good and the evil. We got both.
Yeah.
But which is
yeah,
which?
I was trying
Oh,
to
I guess
web searching about the age of the Earth, but okay.
I was talking about JD Kane. I don't know this other JD. So how are you doing, other JD, with the baby on the picture?
I'm excellent. Thanks for asking.
And what is your background?
I'm Canadian.
Okay.
Atheist, if that's what you're going for.
Oh yeah, I was just wondering. They said the good and bad JD, so I wasn't really sure what they meant by that.
It's because JD Kane has evil tendencies, and I'm.
I think JD Wiley was the one that coined the term. I'm not mistaken.
I wasn't actually. I don't know who came up with it.
Oh, okay. You were the first person I ever heard say it.
Well, I like
I
JD.
totally agree with it.
Well, JD Kane is one of the other atheists out here who's willing to admit they're an anti-theist too. So that's why he always gets props in my book. And I think Leia Chlorian.
Lyrical.
Lyrical?
It's lyric chlorine. Come on, say it right.
Lyric Chlorian. As far as I know, aren't you came out of Mormonism and now you're spiritual?
I'm an agnostic.
Oh,
I'm kind of
no.
an agnostic. Yeah, don't get me started. I'm kind of an occultist at the same time. So yeah, it gets a little messy.
Out of the
But,
frying pan to the fire, kind of.
Not really. I think that I look at spirituality and I look at just the need or feeling of all these different types of things as a very biological need inside of us, that could very easily be explained from just a biological perspective. But at the same time, anthropologically and archaeologically speaking, I mean, there are a lot of mysteries and there is still a lot of stuff out there that is curious. So I'm a middle grounder,
Aliens.
No,
So,
I didn't say aliens.
Whoa.
Yeah. So FSX, let's talk evolution. So what do you say to people? I just saw G-Man's comment on a different video. It's not about species, it's about kinds. And what proof you have that one kind can become something different.
See, well, I think what a lot of people who are pro-evolution have to say about kinds is it's a useless term. It's a whatever you feel it is. And when I asked G-Man what does he think a kind is, he acted like I'm asking a stupid question, and he said dogs, cats, insects. And when he said insects as a kind, it just kind of blows your mind.
Did he really?
He said insects as a kind. So you're saying there were two insects.
Ant
On the
hunting
ark.
spider, totally the same thing.
I mean, I thought just saying there's one kind of beetle would be just fucking ridiculous, but insects just
Wow. He probably says birds too, like
right.
pigeon, penguin. They're virtually the same.
Yeah, birds is my favorite example. They're telling me a hummingbird and a penguin have diverged in the last 4,000 years, but evolution is insane to say a dog and a cat are related.
Yeah. It's like, if you're going to talk about kinds, then you're not talking about science, so you should stop talking.
Exactly, and I never ever let them get away with that sort of thing. It's like you want to talk about evolution, and then they bring up the concept of kinds. Well, it's a nonsensical situation, and I was trying to explain this to G-Man the other day. Apart from being cut off constantly and never being allowed to finish my answer, but the thing I asked
I won't do
was,
that to you here.
yeah,
Except now.
can two animals that are the same kind interbreed and produce viable offspring? And he said yes. And then he thought about that for a minute, because I think he realised what I was going to say next, and he went, "Well, sometimes." So it's not descriptive in any sense of the word, and it's a non-scientific term. And when we're talking evolution, and the theory of evolution, which is a scientific concept, kinds has no meaning. We're talking speciation and speciation events.
Right. I mean, I think the old definition of a kind that Kent Hovind put forward back in the day was something that can bring forth, something that can produce something that is alive, be it sterile or not. And I think a big criticism they have against atheists is that we somehow aren't aware of this issue with species. That they say there's all this disagreement about a species, and yes, they're right. In paleobiology, we spent a whole day talking just about what a species is, and I even kind of corrected my professor and had her change the way she defines it. And for the most part, the term species really is irrelevant. It's not an important term. It's just kind of a convenient term.
Yeah, it's a filing system. Taxonomy. It's just a filing system. It's just here's how we're going to categorize things, try and make the tree more obvious. When really it's all just a progression.
And
so
the
it's
reality,
very hard to figure out where things start diverging. You have to look at it at the grand scheme. Richard Dawkins had a great line on this in one of his. I'm not sure if it was in the book, but it was in one of his talks. That if you go back 65 million generations, you'll find first that your grandfather was a fish, and second, there will never be a single point where you can say that generation is a Homo and that generation is a Homo sapien. You'll never find the break because you can't see it in the short term. It's only in populations, and it takes a great deal of time. So you can only see even at species level, you're looking at very large groups, very large markers.
Right. My favorite analogy has always been language. There was never a Latin-speaking mother that gave birth to a Spanish-speaking son.
I love that analogy. Yeah.
I mean,
there's also a trick where interbreeding, I think, is one of the usual definitions of evolution. That's not as hard and fast a line as we hope most of the time, although it is something of a big hump to get over, both when there is any kind of barrier at all. So,
another issue with the whole species thing is the way I tend to define a species is something that can. What you're trying to ultimately get to with a species is what animals are still sharing genes, what animals in the future are going to still have some kind of connection over time. So it's animals that can breed and produce an offspring, yes, that's viable, but it's also the animals that actually do that. Because if the animals are never going to share genes again, yes, that's kind of a species marker for me. Their evolutionary relationship has just ended. They have now diverged forever. That's what I'm trying to get to with the species.
Yeah, King Crocoduck, I don't know if anyone knows him, he did an excellent job in one of his, I guess you call it, interviews with Ray Comfort to demonstrate that they admit pretty much that there is no definition of kinds. They only offer examples. Well, what's a kind? Oh, well, let's see. There's the dog, like G-Man said, there's the dog kind, there's the cat kind, there's the insect kind, there's the bird kind. Okay, but what is a kind? Well, you see, there's the dog kind, and the cat kind, and the bird kind, and the insect kind. Okay, those are examples. What is the definition? We need something rigorous so you'll stop saying, oh, well, the moment you show that something has changed kinds, I will redefine kinds so that didn't take place.
Right. I mean, their kind definition is simply the animals they see around them in their local area.
Part of the problem with the whole kind issue, I think, is that it's kind of intuitive that you see these differences among the existing animals, and it's easy to kind of group them because they are distinct, and it's intuitive to when you look at what exists. So you can kind of make some sense out of it. But a lot of things that seem intuitive, get us into trouble when it comes to science and truth because our intuitions are often wrong.
Right, and what I can say is the problem is the fact that they attack species. It's hard to talk to them about this, but I'll agree with them. I'm personally frustrated with how scientists decide, oh, this is a new species. We went up in the mountains and we discovered 50,000 species of spider, and the line that they are using for species is very thin because the scientist really wants to put his name on that new animal. He wants to build something for his reputation. So yes, there is an issue with how we are classifying species, but criticizing that doesn't mean that your idea of a kind is any better. And when you ask them to break down a kind, it normally just shows their ignorance of the diversity of the animals that are on this planet. I mean, beetles alone, you could break that up into probably 100,000 legitimate kinds, like that are legitimate species that I would say, yes, those are distinct animals.
Okay, I had a question. I know that one of the most common, I guess you would say, I'm not sure if it's technically called a mutation, or if it's, there's probably a different name for it, but human beings technically have like 2 or 3 different, I guess you would say, species variations that sort of come up every once in a while. One of them is webbed hands, one of them is webbed toes, and one of them is like the little nub and tail at the end of the coccyx. Those are really common. Actually, webbed feet are, like, I think, more common than any of those other ones. And one of the questions that I have is, okay, if we're most closely related to the primate, how come our most common variable mutation would be the webbed feet?
I could answer that. I think that comes down to more embryology and the way our fingers form in utero. And I believe the word is phagicide. Is that where cells just kind of terminate?
Well, I mean, we have gills, for goodness sakes, for half, when we're in utero. So, I mean, there seems to be sort of an amphibious quality to the human being, which is very interesting.
We have structures that are similar to what fish develop that produce gills, but I would agree with them to say they aren't literally gills, as though they are functional gills up to a certain point.
I don't even think they function, right? I mean,
they're not really
developed, right?
I mean, they're similar. They show a similarity of the structure that we developed to produce all the jaw bones in our face that fish use to develop gills.
Yeah, in embryology, it's a really easy way to see evolution in action.
One of the questions...
I actually used an example for, I think it was with G-Man or someone else, showing how how it was one of the predictions of evolution was we should have an intermaxillary bone, and because all other mammals have it. It turns out we do have one. It's only in fetal development, and then it changes to become the upper jaw. And instead, I mean, what you'd expect if you were specially designed, you'd expect that to just form a jaw, and that would be part of it. But instead, you have remnants of our common ancestry with all mammals.
Exactly. But don't we have a common ancestor with every species that is on the planet? But the question is, what is our closest relative? Like, if we went back in the chain of the biological, evolutionary, genealogical chain, who is our closest biological relative? Is it really the chimpanzee? I don't know. I mean,
most of our relatives are dead. So.
No, I'm not saying our relatives. You have to understand the difference of what I'm saying. I'm saying that if we trace the genealogical record of the human species back far enough, we have a common ancestor with every single species that's on this planet. But one species is going to be closer than any other species. And
not necessarily. It might not be one. There'll be a group of them. But still, you'll have some finite group. For instance, chimpanzees and bonobos might be as close to humans as each other. So.
Well, I think
they are. They diverged from each other around about 3 to 3.5 million years ago, where we diverged from both of them between 6 and 7.
And I believe they're our closest living ancestor, or living relative. But we also have, isn't it the Neanderthal that? That's
another close one.
Yeah, there's a whole.
But they're gone, so
whole forest of
chimpanzees, bonobos, those are pretty close to us. The other stuff in the great ape family.
And I think the Neanderthal is an interesting one. That's one where that's where the species line for me gets a little blurry. Yes, it's distinctly different from a human in a way that I would want to call it a different species, yet a high percentage of people alive today have Neanderthal genes. Therefore, we did interbreed with them in nature. So what do we call that? Do we say that's a different species? Do we say that's the same species?
It's a subspecies.
Right.
So it's Homo sapiens Neanderthal.
Are you advertising lasagna?
I believe that, yes, I am holding up 3 meat and 4 cheese lasagna.
Okay.
And we'll soon cook it and eat it. And also, I should note that reproductive isolation can be more than just total. It's not necessarily a binary on-off affair. It can be that your percentage of success of interbreeding is
much lower,
only like 30%, or maybe even shaving only a few percentage points off of it, like 70 or something like that. So. Yeah, you don't need total reproductive failure to achieve, I guess, what you might call effective speciation. In my view of things.
I'm having a little fun here. I glanced over at the Creationism group because I spend all my time there, and someone's having a little fun comparing Hinduism to Christianity when you take the books literally. And so a Christian in the group actually tried to mock Hinduism. It was like they think that the Earth is on the back of a big elephant, and my friend Martin said, "Well, elephant meet pillars. Hello, pillars."
Sorry, I was trying to add an invite on here.
Yeah, no problem. But yeah. He's is up for considering the joke a little bit.
That was funny, JD. Yeah, I didn't get it.
Well, I mean, in Hinduism, the world's on the back of an elephant, and in Christianity, if you take it literally, the Earth is held up by pillars.
I've never heard that before.
Yeah?
See, that's why I think that's where you lost us. I've never heard that.
There are foundations of the Earth that hold it immovable, which of course doesn't really make sense with modern cosmology. So people just kind of skip over that line. Or like, well, that one kind of means something.
Anyway, that's
on to something else.
Okay.
The
I
pillars
know.
moved after
forget
Don't
modern
started in the Word of God, right? Like, man, when you start throwing that in their face, geez.
Forget modern cosmology. Any ancient seafaring peoples readily observed that the things ascending over the horizon was evidence of the Earth being spheroidal. I mean, this is prehistoric, not modern science.
The thing is, as much
Eudoxus estimated the radius of the Earth.
Yeah, it's interesting because if you're not really worried about literal truth, if you look at the Bible as an historical text, I see no problem with them thinking the Earth was, flat with pillars holding it up and a glass dome over top of it. That actually fits with observation if you're not looking at it scientifically. If you're just looking around your environment, things look like they go flat ahead. Looks like there's horizon. You see mountains. Maybe that's holding up everything. Maybe the world is much smaller when you're a peasant, living a tribal lifestyle in Mesopotamia. And so it's understandable that they would come to those conclusions. But every time you bring them up, they're like, no, this stuff was written by God. Therefore, he wouldn't make a mistake like that. Therefore, obviously, that was meant in an entirely different way. I just can't really describe how. But you're a moron for thinking it. So.
Yeah, and again, you can point to ancient seafaring peoples. People knew better even back then.
Yeah.
Oh, yes. Sorry, I put in a couple more invites to some Christians there asking for the link. So hopefully we'll have a Christian jump in here. But I'm good on... Oh, there we go, MG Pillbox.
Yay! Pillbox is
Hey,
here.
MG, how you doing today?
Here we go. Hi, Pillbox.
My favorite creationist.
He's up there.
You're the best, Pillbox. We love you.
Wait, I don't know. Is Pillbox a creationist? I know Nephilim Free is. Actually, I'm not sure if Pillbox is or not.
I think he might be a little bit.
Oh, yeah.
Wait, did
I
he
called
leave?
it out of here.
Did he leave? Hold on a sec.
He'll come back now.
I need quiet on the set. NSA, please add MG42 Pillbox to the detention center list.
Yeah, I was like, just what I was about to tell him, me love you long time.
Oh, man. Oh, I was so excited for MG Pillbox for once in my life. I mean, he used to say the craziest stuff I've heard, but recently I heard something worse. And I don't know if anyone was on this hangout. And I know Nadia... No, I forgot her name, but she was saying the moon wasn't real. And I was...
Shannon.
Yeah, it's got to be Shannon or one of those.
Yeah, it's Shannon.
Oh my
Isabella.
God, right? Like the amazing ex-atheist or whatever the hell
I
she calls
will
herself.
pwn myself.
She has yelled at me more than any other Christian woman in my life. She's the one that I was talking about in my video that told me to not talk to other Christian guys about God because I'm a woman.
I mean, I seriously was debating, should I make a video about that today, or should I just go on live?
I
Hold
honestly,
on, let me give you some more material here. Oh, there it is.
Oh, no.
Yeah, I had a chat with her that was very interesting. Turns out she's are we live?
Yeah.
Good. She's a lying sack of shit. I want to make sure that's not getting hidden away. I'll say it out loud. You're a lying sack of shit, Shanny. I asked her questions. She claimed that she was a militant atheist and that she used to use evolution in all her arguments and did really well. I said, well, fine, lay out some of those arguments. That's a link to the chat we had that I recorded. And she's like, oh, well, I'd start with, like, the beginning of the world and stuff. Like, that's not evolution. Try again. Well, I talk about, like, the origin of life. That's not evolution. Try again. Did you never win an argument against a Christian?
Oh, and how old was the universe?
Oh, 16 billion. Well, first she said 16 million. But I'm like, millions? Like, oh, I mean billion. I'm like, okay, that's still wrong.
Yeah, I don't know why that always annoys when people get the ages like way wrong. They're like, yeah, there's like maybe 200 million years old, and the universe is like, you know, a billion years. And they're, it just drives me nuts. I don't know why.
It's not hard to look up. Was it 13.81 billion for the universe, 4.55 for the Earth?
I mean, if they're in the ballpark, if they say like 4 billion for the Earth and maybe 14 for the universe, I don't mind that. You're kind of close.
4 billion is a little off. 4.5 is a lot closer.
I know it's 4.5, but if they're that close, they're kind of they're close enough for me to be like, well, at least you have a general idea of how the world really works.
10,000 is off by a little bit.
All right. Knock it off.
I think
anyway,
I would like to present my theory.
Go ahead.
I think the Earth. Sorry, there, Lyrical. You go ahead.
No, tell me your theory, your joke.
Okay. My theory is that the Earth is 20 minutes old, and we were all created with false memories. And this call is that there's 3 gods. They're just watching this call, seeing what we'll do.
Well, now you have to also demand that we disprove that, or it's true. Or you're doing it wrong.
Well, you have to disprove it. Otherwise, it's defaultly true.
I can't though. It must be true then.
Wow, you're smarter than I thought.
I mean,
oh, we have a Christian that won't.
We have a Christian. Get him.
Yes, we have a Christian that's here to fight.
wait.
One of the more curious
Fresh fish.
arguments I've heard.
Fresh bait.
Hi, Nate.
Release the lions.
And company.
Run, Nate, run.
Well, Nate's not going to be good. He actually accepts evolution and science and stuff. So that just takes all the fun away from him.
I know. It's no fun.
I think Nate's the only one in my time zone, too.
One of the more curious
Damn
quasi-creationist things I've heard is that the Earth was created mature, so that it has the appearance of age and so on.
Right, and I've heard that one a lot. Like, yeah, the universe is created with light and motion, which, I mean, that's one of the craziest ones I've ever heard. Because, I mean, that's really reaching deep to explain observation.
Well, it's not so much crazy, it's just completely unfalsifiable. There's just no way to disprove it. So it's a useless claim. It's like, okay, well, fine. And you know, the typical response is, well, in that case, you might as well go last Thursdayism. You know, we're just going to make stuff up to support our beliefs. How about you actually try and challenge your beliefs? See if you can try to disprove them yourself to strengthen them. And they're like, well, I don't really want to do that. I'd rather protect them from disproof. That seems more my style.
As much as I like Nate, and as much as I think that he represents his religion just to the best of his ability, after I met him, I made my video Christian Cherry Pickers. You know,
which is funny.
Because it is so obvious. Yes.
It's funny.
Go ahead, Nate.
Because if there's one thing I think this panel knows most about me, is at least I say I hate cherry picking, no matter who does it. So I take very careful steps to make sure I never am in a position to legitimately be criticized of doing such a thing. I'm not perfect, but that's something I'm very mindful of, and I think the room would agree. So that means either I'm right, or you're right, or we're both wrong, and I would be interested to see what popular opinion thinks. Yes,
and I have to say one good thing about Nate. One thing I really like about Nate, even though I may disagree with a lot of things he says, at least he listens to what I had just said, and he responds according to what I just said, whereas there's some other people, you say something, and then their response is like, like I just said, I believe I'm a descendant of a banana. Like that.
No,
so I have to agree with Nate there. I brought up a difficult passage, one of the most difficult passages in the Old Testament. Nate's like, well, that's It is weird. Let's look it up. Let's study a little bit. And we went ahead and studied. He wasn't like,
But-
let's not
but
talk
the
about
problem
that.
was
You're
he-
taking it out of
he-
context. He said,
he
let's go ahead and do a little Bible study. We'll look into it. It was the passage where God comes to kill Moses, I believe.
He interprets it the way he wants it to be interpreted. He won't take the scriptures for verbatim. You know, he'll say, well, this is what it meant, and this is what it was meant to be said. You know, it's like, no, this is what it actually says.
Those are some
man.
hefty
Well,
claims you're directing my way.
It's actually important to get the context. You know, if he's actually trying to get the context rather than trying to make it fit with his current religious beliefs. I think I give Nate credit for that.
I think you've also got to be careful that you're not labeling all Christians or all theists as literalists. The vast majority of Christians out there are not biblical literalists, so they will be able to have a view that can run contrary to what is specifically sort of stated or interpreted or translated within the particular version of the Bible that they use. And, you know, even as a Christian myself, when, you know, I was never...
You're still a
biblical
Christian
literalist.
now?
No.
Oh, okay.
I was never a biblical literalist, but went to church with a lot of people that were. But I guess I came back to the concept of if a God exists and it was worthy of worship, then this must be written down wrong. And, you know, examples where, you know, like God commands the death of every man, woman, and child of the Amalekites, for example.
Yeah, there's a lot of questions.
You know, there's a lot of those sorts of things that you get brought up. And as a Christian, I would look at those and go, well, that's inconsistent with a moral, loving, merciful God.
And that was kind of my point, yes. That certain Christians, even the best of Christians, you know, and Nate has earned that title, in my opinion, will still cherry pick the gospel or the Word of God, the Bible. Because
well, let's test that. Nate.
But I think it's unfair.
I'm gonna apply the test right here. I'm gonna hit him. So Nate, how did Judas die, and why is Potter's Field called the Field of Blood?
Let's see. Judas died in one account by hanging himself, and another account by his guts spilling out. The Potter's Field was named the Field of Blood, I believe, because of that instance. No one wanted to own that property, or someone gave it that title to make sure no one would own that property. Something like that, as best I off the top of the head remember. Is that accurate?
But Jesus said in John.
Well, see, Lyrical,
Satan
he didn't cherry pick. He didn't just pick one of them and pick one, or he didn't try to mesh them together. So that would be cherry picking if he did that, but he didn't. He went and said, "Here's what the accounts say." And by the way, the Potter's Field is the Field of Blood for both reasons. It's because the one where he spilled his guts out, that's the reason, because he spilled so much blood there, and the other one is because it was paid for with blood money. So there's two different, depending on which one you read. It's either Matthew or I believe it's the account in Acts.
Nate, I have a question for you about this. Anyway, JD. So anyway, like when Jesus actually, before Jesus had died, and they were at the Last Supper, and this is in John, and Jesus says, you know, Satan, because he knows Satan's entering Judas at that point, and he's like, Satan, do what you need to do and do it quickly. Why is it that he allowed Satan to enter Judas?
First of all, he didn't tell Satan. He told Judas to go do what he needs to do after he realized Satan.
No, he said Satan. He literally said Satan in the verse. Satan, go do what you need to do quickly.
You know, in the interest of this, let's pause and research this.
Okay, I got my Bible right here. Hold on.
What verse? I'm going on Bible Hub. What's the verse number?
Oh, I love Bible Gateway.
You know, I could just shortcut this and say Lyrical is completely wrong.
That would solve it really quick.
Lyrical, remember, if you're going to say, fuck you, JD, be specific which one you're talking to.
I never said fuck you, JD.
I said if you're going
to
be specific.
John 13:27. Okay.
It's at the end here. John, there's... Yeah. All right. Right. Yeah, here. Yes. And as soon as Judas had received it, Satan entered him. And Jesus said to him, "Do quickly what you have to do." That's Judas 13:27. I mean, that's
You
John.
said Jesus literally said Satan.
Mm-hmm. As soon as Judas had received it, Satan entered him. And Jesus said, "Do quickly what you have to do." All right. So Jesus doesn't say Satan literally, but he does recognize that Satan has entered Judas.
Sometimes I feel the
And it
Christian
says
could
it-
better prove the point they're trying to make by simply remaining silent.
Okay. You don't think that there's a significant aspect to the fact that Jesus allowed Satan to enter Judas? I mean, as soon as Judas had received it, Satan entered him.
Okay. Well, so let's forget all the other stuff that we were dealing with, and if this was your actual question, what is your actual question about it? Like, what are you looking for? Like, how could...
Okay, Judas, I guess, is considered to be a very bad person in Christendom, but yet he fulfilled a means to an end, and Jesus allowed Satan to enter Judas. Actually, he said, "It is the one of whom I give this piece of bread, and when I've dipped it into the dish," so basically Jesus dipped the bread into the dish and then gave it to Judas, and then Satan entered him. So it's almost as if he chose him.
Well, so I want to do the opposite of cherry pick right now, because earlier, again, off memory, I'm not even looking at Bible stuff right now. I'm in the middle of other stuff, but off memory, didn't it say Satan entered him another time too, like whenever he decided to take the money or look for a way to betray him?
It did, because I have actually... It says it in verse 2. It says the devil had already put it into the mind of Judas to betray him. It says that in verse 2 of chapter 13. And I have argued that, with Christians before, but at the same time, Jesus seemed to needed that because it was Jesus's pursuit to be.
Well, did he need it, or he's just going along with what's happening?
Right. Well, here's something interesting. I actually just read this when I was reading Jesus Interrupted from Bart Ehrman, and he says, in Mark, we're not told what happened. There's no reason stated, but it is mentioned he received money, so maybe it was out of greed. In Matthew, it states explicitly in 26:14 states explicitly that Judas did it for the money, and in Luke, on the other hand, it indicates that Judas did it because Satan entered him, and I believe John said something similar. So it depends on which gospel you read.
You see the evolution of the demonization of Judas, where the earliest Gospels don't have Judas totally demonized, where by the time you get to John, many, many years later, the story has evolved where now Judas is this, minion of Satan.
Yeah, and in some ways Matthew not so much contradicts, but does not mention Satan. It says he did it for the money, but that of course someone could interpret that as being Satan making him do an evil deed. So there are ways around that. But
Pillbox, I have a question for you. Being that John was the latest.
No, I think he's on a phone or something. He keeps trying to join.
Okay. I thought that was him that just commented.
Nope.
Oh yeah, Pillbox is trying to is talking in the comments. His connection's too low. Try prayer.
What happens if he does that and it instantly works? Further consideration?
Shit.
Then I will renounce my atheism.
That doesn't prove anything.
Well, I get a kick out of the Synoptic Gospels, which is Mark and then Matthew and then Luke, and how the evolution of the Gospels really, really progressed. Because basically, we already know that they didn't have any other references to Matthew.
Before we get too far away, are you satisfied with whatever your first question was? Before we move on, let's wrap that up.
I don't know if you ever really answered it to my satisfaction.
Well, then let's stay there until you're satisfied.
Okay, sure.
So where were we going with that? Unless you want to jump around, I'm just trying to follow you.
Well, it seems like Jesus allowed Satan to enter Judas to fulfill a means to his end.
Okay, and what specifically is your deal with that?
Well, he was one of his disciples. He was a good guy, but Jesus allowed him to be overtook, and then eventually he committed suicide because of it. So, I mean...
I don't know if I put him in a good guy category.
You don't know if you put him in a good guy category. Okay. Well, I mean, it seems like if Jesus really cared about this person, he would have advocated Satan to leave him, just like he advocated demons and devils to leave other people.
Well, what about
during his ministry?
Again, if nothing else, I'm making a great case for not cherry picking. If you take the totality of it, it seems like the narrative. Jesus says a couple times, except, he talks about how he's keeping his disciples protected and safe, and exactly what you're saying. But he always adds when he says this, but he always adds, except from the one who, like, from the beginning or before the beginning, something like that, has determined to, like, betray him and things like this, referring to Judas. So it seems like, what you say, Jesus is agreeing with, except instead of saying he's such a good guy and protecting him like the other 11, he's like always prefaces what he says with, except that one, like, born to destruction or destined to, I don't know exactly, I'm paraphrasing, but
do you think that Jesus always knew, right from the get-go, that Judas would be the one to betray him? And don't you think that if he really was God, he would have tried to prevent that type of betrayal? He would try to save his soul, just like he saved the souls of so many others.
Well, again, I don't necessarily...
And heal them.
Well, I don't necessarily think those are compatible. I think there's some non sequiturs there. Like, Jesus says, let's see, the first thing you asked was, what? Why wouldn't he? Well, I would put that in the same category as why didn't he, why did he even go through with the whole crucifixion thing? Why didn't he, do as he says and calls down angels to save him? And in this prayer that we have from text, he says, not my will, but, his Father's be done. So I would put it in the same thing. Like, he's just going along with some of the stuff.
Actually, he cried and begged, why have you forsaken me, Elijah, Elijah, please save me. At least in Mark.
I'm so glad you brought that up. Well, we're not there yet. We were talking about before he was arrested. But it's interesting you say that because some people will say, if he's God, how could he not know? How can God leave himself, who he himself just crucified?
There's so many weird paradoxes.
I understand. Check this out. He's quoting a proverb. How do I know that? Not cherry picking? Turn to the book of Proverbs. I believe it's 21. But that very phrase he quotes exactly.
Yes, but Jesus...
Interesting.
Yes, but of course...
Just saying. Hashtag just saying.
Okay, but Nate, but do you also understand that the authors of these Gospels used Old Testament references to try to tie in this type of dogmatic,
non-issue. If we have, listen to what you're saying. If what we have is recorded, the LO whatever. If we have that's recorded and that's what these people's problems are with, like how could he not know if he's God? How didn't he know? Where did his father go? If that's the case being made, and it is a direct quote of a Proverbs,
but he never said he was God. He always stated himself as
not even what we're talking about.
Okay.
So you're saying they tried to tie this in. That's another issue altogether. So if the text we have that you're currently brought up has him quoting this thing and is a direct quote from one of the Proverbs, or Psalms, I'm sorry, I said Proverbs, it's Psalms.
It's Eloi, Eloi, lima shabashi thani, is what he said.
I'll go with that provisionally. But yeah, anyway, so if it's a direct quote from the Psalm, what else do you want? That takes care of all those who would say, well, how could he not know? How could he not know? If that honestly has nothing to do with that, and the guy's quoting a Psalm that everyone at the time knew, that's simple. Problem solved.
No.
I recently cited this limitation on the sort of
if he was
point-driven commentary.
Truly a God or the Son of God, why would he be saying Elohi, Elohi, save me, Elijah, Elijah, save me from this terrible fate? Why would he say these things?
If I start singing to you, every rose has its thorn, would you think I'm in a happy place, or do you think I'm in some sort of love-struck relationship?
Okay, so God is allowed to God. Do you understand how?
You really need to follow one track here.
Oh, it just doesn't make any sense why. Okay.
It doesn't make sense because instead of going like this, you're going like that.
You know what?
It's one of the most poignant aspects of the Gospels when Jesus calls out for Elijah to save him. It's one of the most. I don't know how Christians can actually, and then in Mark, they're yelling, "Oh, listen, he's calling to Elijah." And you know what? They gave him the wine-soaked cloth, and he took it. In that regard, in that gospel, he took it, and then he died. So, I mean, and it's very different in every other gospel, but that was the first.
I just have to say, at this point, I need a drink.
Here.
Ew.
Yeah.
What is that?
Smirnoff Green Apple.
Ew, you're such a girl. No, I'm just kidding.
Well, white girl or whatever, yeah.
Fruity. No, I'm just kidding.
Fruitier the better.
Alright. Smirnoff Ice is gross. Ew, okay, anyway.
So just to double check, Nate, just the topic of this whole hangout, do you have an issue with any of the 3 topics that are the core of this hangout?
What do you mean? What are the core? What's the core of the hangout?
Mostly evolution, age of the Earth, the Great Flood.
Oh, no, whatever. I guess is this FSX? Sorry, I can't watch the screen right now. But is that who's asking?
Yeah, that's who I was asking.
Yeah, like I don't know if I told you, I guess, my actual position on that before, but yeah, so I think evolution, I'm fine with that. I think Pillbox and G-Man would be fine if you explained it appropriately. Like, hey, does crap ever change? I can't imagine the answer would be no. But when you go further than that, it's bad. But I think evolution, as science explains it, is the most logical, reasonable answer we have. That's why we go with it. That being said, I think a lot of people will either say things that science doesn't regarding evolution, or they'll get too high on their horse. Like, it's a theory, and that means we 99.9999% know. I won't go that far. Like, I'll remain retain a healthy bit of skepticism, because I just think there's a lot of pieces we don't have. So although this seems like a perfectly great explanation so far, I wouldn't be surprised if someday we're like, oh, well, how about that? So in the interest of never saying never, I think, maybe if, yeah, whatever. I think it's the best explanation we have in the natural world. So I guess that's that. But I'll remain a healthy skepticism. The flood, whatever. We have historical proof, archaeological proof that, you can't say global flood, but you can say very, you can say close to that, or at least a mini multi-region flood. If it happened at the same time, if it happened all in 40 days and 40 nights, for that, whatever. But because I understand people say, well, the steam vents, the Earth, it would have been vaporized, blah, 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 blah. I get it. In the natural world, makes sense. But I do believe that, we're created by one being, and, if I believe that, truly everything less than that has to be considered as an option. So, could this happen supernaturally in a way that, didn't vaporize people? Well, sure, it could, but, nothing depends on that. My theology doesn't depend on that. My faith doesn't depend on that. I put that in the realm of never say never.
All right. Fair enough. That's really not that bad of an answer. So one last part of that, the age of the Earth.
Yeah, don't care. I'm good with billions of years old. I find it interesting, and again, for the young Earth people, like, out of everything I've just talked about, I find this one more difficult to take in. But in the interest of keeping an open mind, whatever. I guess there's some way it could have happened. I would be interested to see a scientific model saying exactly in depth and detail what would have to have happened for it to be a 6,000-year-old Earth, geology, biology, all this other stuff. I'd be interested just because that fascinates me. But yeah, I think the people in Genesis, the Jews whose history this is and who wrote this stuff, they will tell you that, Genesis 1, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Great. An undetermined amount of time later, days, weeks, billions of years, an undetermined amount of time later, God, they'll say it's a restoration period. Like, there was already humans, there was already life, there was all this stuff, and then something went wrong. And after an undetermined amount of time, Genesis takes off as a restoration account, saying this is how life was brought back into the world. Anyway, so that's from the mouth of the people who wrote this stuff.
So you're taking the Genesis story, you believe the Earth already existed, the universe already existed, and then the Garden of Eden just popped into this pre-existent universe 6,000 years ago?
I'm not saying that's what I believe. Like, again, I really am hesitant to put a flag anywhere and say, this is my belief. Like, there's lots of hypotheses or theories I kind of like more than others. Like, I kind of like the gap theory, some will call it. But, it keeps an origin with the original writers. And I don't think science has a problem with it. Like, stuff happened. Very vague, very undetermined. It's like God created the heavens and the earth. So really the only problem science would have there is the claim that a deity created this stuff rather than we don't know.
What I would say is when I claim to be a Christian, when I claim to be a God believer, I had a personal problem squaring the idea of the mere size of the universe, billions of galaxies, all these stars, and somehow the Earth is the main point of all this. An insignificant dot is we need this huge galaxy, this huge universe for what? It doesn't seem to make sense. It doesn't seem like the Bible incorporates all that we've learned, and it seems like it'd be easier to just explain that as these people were ignorant of reality, and they made up an explanation. I guess I'm having trouble seeing your point of view.
It's actually a recent problem, because it was only very recently we discovered that we're not just one galaxy. It's only in like the past 100 years or so we finally, figured out that, what we thought were like plasma clusters are actually other galaxies. We had to build the telescopes to do that. And so it's actually a relatively recent problem for Christianity, for people who try to take in how a vast universe is and then somehow think that there's an anthropocentric point to it.
But what if it's all inconsequential? Like, what if the vastness of our universe or the multiverse really is not that big of a deal from a God perspective? Go with me. So, what if he's like, I want people, and here we are. And, there's nothing to do with how vast this universe and our perception may be. Maybe it's in the size of a pebble. Maybe it's non-existent. I'm saying I think perspective is everything. So if we want to try to project our perspective on this deity that, I think created everything, I don't know if that's really a good case. I understand that it seems like, how little us in all this huge mess. Well, what if this huge mess is just like a big ocean, and somewhere in that ocean, God's like, I want people. There's people. And now there's this huge ocean around us, and it's like, oh my gosh, this ocean is so big. How are we significant? What were the only people?
What if there was what if there's other intelligent life out there? How would you explain that? How would that fall into your belief system?
Well, not to mention, this is kind of an ad hoc thing. This is after the fact. The Bible obviously doesn't take into account tons and tons multiple trillions of stars. That's not really
maybe it was providence. Ooh.
I don't think that Nate really thinks there are aliens. Do you, Nate?
I don't think there are, because I much like everything else, I have no good reason to believe in aliens.
But let me ask you a question, because you brought up a really good point.
Life elsewhere, as simple as that might be.
So could I just ask my question? My question is, you said, so God wants people, and you said this twice. So God wants people, and so he made the earth, and he made this existence, and all of these different types of things, and then we have like the plan of all of our existences and all these types of things. But my big question is to you, why did God want people in the first place? Like, what is the whole purpose and point to this whole shenanigans of people? Because it really seems to be quite damning, if you will.
I can give you my thoughts and what I believe.
Because you're a representative of your faith, so your thoughts are very significant.
Nate, I wrote before we jumped. I wanted to ask you, Nate. When you refer to aliens, do you just mean any life, or life that is capable of that's similar to us? Because when I think of aliens now, I think of just self-replicating molecules elsewhere in the universe, which seems like not that difficult to claim, given.
Yeah, I think the chances of us finding it are slim to none. I don't have a problem with the probability that something is out there. I have kind of a big problem with us finding anything that would come close or especially exceed our current state. But if that happened, then whatever.
Well, let's say, Nate, we discover radio signals from another star, something that can't be produced by nature, a specific frequency that requires technology. That would show that at least something that can invent something like a radio would have to be somewhat similar to us, right?
Well, yeah. I mean, if that happens, then yeah, fine.
So did God create them too?
Well, I guess we can hypothesize, but we have to be aware that's exactly what we're doing.
Of course.
Did Jesus die for their sins too? Or did they have their own Jesus?
A couple quick thoughts off the top of my head. Well, if I really think one entity created everything in everything, then directly or indirectly, yeah, that would have to be a byproduct of that. Did Jesus die for their sins? Maybe he visited their own planet. Maybe he visited their own world. Maybe this scenario is played out an infinite number of times. Those are just some of the quick thoughts. There's not really an easy way around this. It's a big subject, and all we have is conjecture, which I'm okay with as long as we know that's exactly what we're doing.
What if they communicate with us and declare they have a different religion?
Well, join Ask a Christian Religious Discussion and join the club. We have atheists, we have theists, we have deists, and now we have whatever this guy is.
Why would we join a club when you can't answer any questions that we have? Basically, you're saying, I don't know. I mean, these are just questions.
Now, I want you to
maybe.
Now, I want to make this point, Lyrical, that scientifically speaking, I don't know is a much better answer than something out of the butt that you think people want to hear.
And I totally agree with you, Nate. I guess what I'm trying to get to is what would it take for maybe a person like you, who I think is kind of in the middle. You do accept a lot of science that maybe other Christians who probably misrepresent you and other Christians don't accept. But what would it take for you to seriously question your beliefs? That's why I provide the alien example. If we found out there was alien life out there in the universe, would that challenge your beliefs? Or no matter what, are you going to just come back to, well, God has to be real, God has to be the explanation for all this?
Well, I wouldn't say no matter what, but I'd say in that case, yeah, because that doesn't really have anything to do with what I believe is a core theism, or especially, if I said I believe God created this solar system and nothing else, and then we found out there was a whole other world out there, that'd be a problem. But, I mean, in a blanket statement, maybe this was intentional at some point or whatever, but if we believe God created everything, well, anything falls in the realm of everything. So that specific instance, no, it wouldn't deter me. I think something that would is, I honestly can't imagine it, but again, open mind in the interest of never saying never, it would have to be something, probably a recurrence of multiple things happening over the course of time to counteract my 3+ decades of just the totality of existence. I don't know a better way. Big events, small events, everyday life events, subconscious. I mean, it's a pretty big task. So, 20 years ago, it may not have taken that much to cause me to shake a little bit and, really dig in and see if what I believe has feet to it or teeth. But I think at this point, I'm just so certain that if I'm not claiming to people that I know what absolute truth is, because I lack a way to prove it to them, I'm saying this is what I believe to be absolute truth. I'm putting my entire stake in this. That's how certain I can be, or I am. Does that make sense?
How about if aliens pop up with their alien religion and visit us and routinely perform miracles to demonstrate the truth of their religion and their deity and so on?
Well, just give me some assurance. There will be an end to what ifs. Is there an end to what ifs coming?
Well, here, let me give you another.
I think Lyrical's getting angsty because I can't answer hypothetical what ifs in a affirmative way that appeases her.
No,
well, more
no.
importantly,
No,
I want to point out that your cat behind you is doing the most adorable stretches.
But I will ask you a question, Nate, because I think that you're pressing on a little bit of a poignant point here, because you can't answer certain questions that we have for you, but yet you can answer a very important question that I think every atheist in the room wants to know.
Heather, the questions. Well, I gotta stop you though. The questions I can't answer, you can't answer, or you'd be a liar. There's what.
Nate, let me finish my thought, because I was right in the middle of a sentence, and we both hate when we do that to each other, don't we? Nate, how did you become a Christian? And I don't want to hear your whole testimony story, but seriously, tell us just a little bit of how you became a Christian and how you found your faith, because I think that once we understand,
we could go back to evolution, the age of the earth, and the flood, like the title suggested of the hangout. We could do that rather than hammer Nate over the head with giant bricks.
Why not?
He doesn't like it when anybody else has attention off of him, does he? Oh no.
Exactly. Why aren't you guys talking about me? I'm the important one here. Come on. Ask me about all my stuff. I'll tell you everything.
I think the Earth is about an hour old by now. The Greek gods are not pleased, so.
Well, here, Nate made a comment earlier about there being plenty of evidence of a flood, maybe not worldwide, but pretty vastly covering the planet. And I guess I forgot to really nail him down on that. I don't know if there really is evidence that a significant amount of the globe has been flooded at one time.
Definitely, it was not a flood that covered the highest mountains. There's enough evidence that did not happen. Not unless we abandon reality and go for last Thursdays and where anything's possible. A local flood makes sense. I mean, pretty much every civilization that lives near water has a flood narrative.
Well, floods happen all the time. I mean, but anytime you have evidence in geology of floods, all of a sudden, well, that's got to be the big one. There's no other way to explain it.
It's not just the claim of a global flood; it's also the claim that goes along with it that basically the entirety of the geological column was laid down in that single deluge event. Now, that's the component that we can actually demonstrate that did not happen. And the easiest way to demonstrate that is really with the existence of aeolian deposits in the middle of the geologic column. And these are types of deposits which don't form underwater, and that they're formed by wind. So you get them in desert environments. So it's dry, it's sand dunes that get covered and then compacted. Probably the best known of these is in the Grand Canyon area, which is the Coconino sandstones. Now here you've got a large volume of sand dune deposit or an aeolian deposit, in the same way that you get the Gobi Desert, where we get the Cretaceous aeolian deposits there with all the fossils in them. But this can't happen underwater. The other side is we've got things like evaporites, where like salt pans and things like this, where you get a deposit that's been laid down and it's in the middle of the geologic column, where the water must have been evaporated. So that can't happen in the middle of a deluge. We also have multiple instances of igneous deposits where a particular igneous rock, and we can determine when magma comes out, whether it's submerged at the time where it comes out or whether it's coming out on dry land. You get these all through the geologic column. So you can demonstrate quite clearly that the concept of a worldwide global flood which deposited the entirety of the geologic column, which is what's being held to from places like Answers in Genesis and Creation Ministries International and the Institute of Creation Research and all of this, it is complete and utter bollocks. When you talk about local floods, obviously you've got rivers and deltas and those sorts of things where you would get local floods. But around about, I think it was about 10,000, 12,000 years ago, somewhere around there, the Bosphorus actually broke through and filled the Black Sea. And that's probably the largest example of a regional, local type flood in that Middle East region. The Mediterranean is too old. That was back in the Pleistocene, I think, that broke through and filled the Mediterranean basin. But definitely, those legends could have originated around the Black Sea with the breaking of the Bosphorus.
Yeah, and that was actually an example I was going to bring up. Salt domes, which, like, if you drill a core under the Mediterranean, you'll find multiple examples of how this water body has evaporated multiple times in history. And just the sheer depth of the salt and the fact that it has, aquatic life, and the sheer amount of energy it takes to evaporate a sea kind of shows that Earth can not possibly be 6,000 years old. It's one of my favorite examples. Aside from the obvious ones like ice cores or kind of deposits at the bottom of lakes. They're all pretty good.
Chalk. Chalk is a pretty easy one.
Well, speaking of some kind of flood, I have creamy chicken and shrimp and Parmesan Alfredo sauce.
I have to say, we're having a ball in the side chat here. Just
I see that.
We don't have any creationists in here. We're just having fun making up, going through the things we've heard in the past. Like, you practice the religion of evolutionism. I've heard that one before. And
yeah, I think
evolution loses.
I love it. Yeah,
why would you do that?
Realize that we can no longer take you seriously just because you said that, right?
Except a lot of times it's darned British people. Everyone, other people have accents, but it seems to be them the most.
Yeah.
Or people who want to sound British. They're like, let me tell you about evolution. No, you lose. Stop talking.
So, Atheism TV and Peter haven't said anything yet, so if they want to speak up, you guys are free to do it.
I just wish they would update their stuff.
Sure.
Hey, JD. I'm sorry I destroyed your worldview, man. I'm sorry.
Are you really sorry? You don't sound...
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Well, GMG, that's an assertion. You're going to support that with, evidence or something?
Hi, guys.
How's it going?
I'm very good, and you?
I am wonderful. I've seen Atheist TV before on YouTube. I don't really know what all you do.
Talk about atheism?
Blood of the innocent,
Sorry about that. I missed your last. I missed your last sentence because somebody barged in.
That's probably better.
Well, you probably just worship like Dawkins and Hitchens and Harris and Satan and Obama and.
I'll tell you the truth, Nate.
Yeah.
I'm thinking about subscribing to Satanism just to prove a point.
What point would that be?
Is it the no true Scotsman fallacy?
Oh no.
I think I'm gonna make a video saying that I am maybe a subscribing Satanist just to prove a point. Mm-hmm.
What point? I'm interested.
The points of the fallaciousness of if I believe in God, then why not worship the devil as well, right? Because I don't believe in either.
Well, LaVeyan Satanism wouldn't have devil worship.
Satanists don't believe in either. You know that, right? Okay, but anyway, I'm a expressive way to saying that I'm a Satanist at this point.
Well, Satan is the coolest character in the Bible. He managed to bait God into torturing someone.
You know what? I think I'm going to have to make a video on Satanism at this point because it seems like it's going to have to prove a point.
Wow.
Yeah, the whole Job narrative is kind of off, especially when you move to the New Testament. You're like, this loving God, some of the things he did in the past were they're kind of dick moves.
There's
Satan challenged him. Well, I'll torture this guy for a while. We'll have some fun. No.
Well, if you look at Satan, in that perspective, but really, what I'm trying to do is look at Satan from an anti-Christian perspective at this point. But yeah, if you look at Satan as as like a character in Job. What? What did he say? Who said that? Come on.
I said second place is first loser.
I mean, you have to admit, in the Bible, Satan, you know, he doesn't kill quite as many people, and does he really do anything that bad?
No, he doesn't. Actually, he's an agent for God in almost every single circumstance.
Well, I'm curious, Nate. Do you think Satan was in the garden, or was it just a... Well, they even call him specifically a snake, or I think it's serpent. Serpent. Sorry, serpent. Is serpent enough? You know, it was a serpent. It wasn't necessarily a dark evil force. Then again, it's talking. So, well, I hope you think it's kind of allegorical. There wasn't a literal Adam and Eve, since I mean genetics kind of takes that apart.
Yeah, that's a good question.
That's how the serpent lost its legs, man.
Nate is focusing on something else. Nathan,
I'm listening. I said I was multitasking.
Yeah. Do you think of a literal Adam and Eve or an allegorical one? Like it's actually more of a moral story?
Yeah, good
I
question.
kind of hold to a literal Adam and Eve, like literal two people. And the serpent, you know, I think it was somehow the devil. Whether he was slithering or I guess walking around and slithering around, I don't quite know that. But you know, I think in some way, shape, or form, his presence was there. And there was some sort of conversation that really happened, whether it was audible or telepathical or whatever. I don't really know or care. But I do hold more to a literal. There were two people. They had a conversation with this supernatural entity, otherwise known as a Satan.
So I have a question about Adam and Eve. Tell me, so you think it's not an allegory? You think they really did exist? But they were just normal humans, correct?
Yeah, but there are plenty of people that would disagree with me.
Yes. So they were two humans, and they populated the whole world. That means a lot of inbreeding going on.
Motherfucking.
So how do you explain that there was not any genetic problems right at the beginning, which in theory, you know, there's been a lot of experiments done by biologists, and when there's too much inbreeding, it's a death sentence for the species. So how do you explain that?
I think there are a few interesting off the top of my head comments, and keep in mind, whenever I answer things like this, you must be aware this has so little to do with my theology. That's why I kind of keep it vague, because I don't really know, claim to know, nor care beyond that. So I like talking about it and everything, but I don't want you to think I'm being too vague for whatever reason. Anyways, so I think, well, first of all, because God wanted it that way, therefore, like the flood. Because God, it has to be a plausibility. Other than that, I would say, I thought science recently came up with, actual science. I thought maybe someone has read this, because I just glanced at it in passing, that there was some... I think Cole, the biologist we have in here, I think someone actually pressed Cole on it, and he pointed to an article in some science journal recently that said science can now explain how everyone could have potentially came from... I don't want to get this wrong or misquote him, but I think 2 people or a very small number of people or something like that. So I thought that was real science explaining that, and I thought, oh, that's interesting. I'll get around to it someday. But I haven't read the article. Anyway, so I would also say, on a more if I'm wrong side, on a more if evolution is true or whatever, you know, and we don't know about abiogenesis. I understand it doesn't have anything to do with evolution, but assuming there is one abiogenesis event that started, you know, what we now call evolution and this progression, why couldn't there have been multiple abiogenesis events, and why did they have to start with you know, a single cell? If truly there's a creator behind this, why couldn't they just say abiogenesis single cell, abiogenesis people, multiple cells?
Well, that's very simple. Is because we have biometric dating, which allows us to date rocks fairly precisely, and the older the rocks, the simpler the forms of life that are fossilized in these rocks. So that's dating. Yes, radiometric dating. And if we go in with the oldest rocks, where there are fossils, we can find fossils of very, very primitive single-celled organisms. That's the reason.
Let's be clear, guys. If you saw this out, you would definitely go and see this movie. In a heartbeat.
What is it? I can't see.
Oh no.
Cain, Abel, when your mother is the only female on earth, there is no one else.
Oh, nice.
Unless you go to the land of Nod, right?
Fuck no.
Oh.
All right, Nate. So with the Garden of Eden, do you believe that it was possible for Eve to give birth to a child without pain before this point?
Refresh my memory. That opportunity never actually existed, right? It was just a claim to the contrary.
Well, God claimed that now when she gives childbirth, her pain's going to be multiplied, right?
So I guess this may be where.
So were babies really tiny before, or her hips were really big?
I really want to answer. So maybe this is where Lyrical wants to throw some interpretation thing out, but I think this is where one interprets. If Eve, prior to that whole "it's going to suck when you have kids," had kids, then that would certainly be a claim. Or was God simply saying, hey, guess what? When you have kids, it's going to suck. And there was no prior time for it to be claimed the opposite. Does that make sense?
He cursed her because she had partaken of the fruit, and he said to her at this point, like, so what he is trying to say is before that point, because she had children before that point, were children somehow smaller, or were they somehow, was childbirth somehow different before that point? Because she had already had at least 2 children, before that point that we know of. We know of
Who are
Adam,
those children?
We know of Cain and Abel.
No. Well, even if they were born after, I mean, it's a hypothetical. If God made Adam and Eve so that Eve can bear children, and if they didn't eat of the fruit, then she would have been able to give birth without pain. So that's like physically not possible unless.
Even if she didn't have children beforehand, even if Cain and Abel came later in the gospel or in the story or whatever, it was God trying to say you could have had babies without pain, but because you ate of the fruit, now you're cursed of pain? No, I think what they're trying to say is a metaphor of how women are just burdened with an excruciating amount of pain when it comes to childbirth, because men had to see women giving birth for thousands and thousands of years and wonder, like, are they gonna live? Have you ever, right? Kind of get that or no? Okay, apparently not.
Someday I'd like to have like an hour where you can have a dialogue with me, except you can speak for me as well as yourself. I think that could be interesting. But no, that's what I'm saying. Interpretation, right? So again, in the land of hypotheticals, forget Nod. Eve never had kids, so would it have, if she would have popped out a kid before God cursed her, would that have sucked? Well, we don't know. All we can do is speculate. Or when God says, hey, congratulations, now you're cursed, did he just do that? Or does he go like, hey, I'm God, I know you're going to do this, so by the way, you're cursed? I don't know. Like, there's no way to give a, there's no way to give an.
But in Genesis story, Nate, it seems to imply that God was cursing women.
It does seem to imply that. I can provisionally give you that one. It does seem to infer it.
It seems to sort of infer that the pain of childbirth was because of this thing that this one woman did,
And also, part of this is depending on the translation that you're reading. I know in the King James it says that he will greatly multiply, and so if you can't multiply by 0. So I've heard people say, well, in the King James there had to be some pain because you can't multiply 0. So it does somewhat depend on the translation that you're reading, what your stance on this is. But yeah.
If I may play the grammar Nazi, it is imply, not infer.
I think. Correct me, grammar Nazi.
Dang, Nadia.
Isn't imply a stronger use of infer? Isn't infer kind of loosely?
No. To infer is to deduce or similar from evidence, and imply is to make statements that are indirect.
Nadia, do you really want us to get into definitions as much as you think we do? I think it's really funny.
Okay, fine, I'll give you that. I was fighting for ground, fine. Imply.
Is it alright if I ask a question, actually?
It is, except then I have to go because I have another hangout to get ready for. But what's
okay.
up?
I was just going to ask. In the Genesis story, it always talks about how they don't know the knowledge of good and evil. How are they morally responsible for knowing that the tree was not good to eat? Being is that is knowledge of a good and evil action. Would you say it was just a wider knowledge of good and evil?
I wouldn't even say that. I don't think you have to go that far. I think they had one job to do. Don't touch the tree. So regardless of some moral compass, they certainly know the difference between touching a tree and not touching a tree. So I really think it's one simple disobedience thing. So regardless of any moral thing, I don't think you have to go that far. If this deity, who they have complete proof of, says, hey, don't eat stuff from this tree, and they do, does that make sense?
But don't they have to have the moral ability to judge whether or not that deity is good already?
Well, I think we're talking morality though, but I don't. Why are we going that far away?
Because it says that they were perfectly innocent, Nate.
Well, it doesn't matter if it's Odin. It doesn't matter if it's an evil deity. Like, morality doesn't matter. Like, this
but do you
guy
understand
says,
the paradox
don't
of
do
Christianity? Just say you understand the paradox of Christianity.
I will never understand the paradox that is lyrical Orion.
Oh, well, I didn't say lyrical Orion. Whatever.
So I have another comment about Genesis. There seems to be a contradiction in Genesis because it does say in there that before the fall, so before Adam and Eve ate of the fruit, they were not going to die, and after that they were cursed with death. So that means that Adam and Eve and possibly their offspring would not be able to die if they didn't eat of the fruit. But before they ate of the fruit, God told them to be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth. So God wanted them to have a lot of children. Now, if they didn't eat of the fruit, then they would have filled up the whole earth. Nobody would have died, and that would have happened very quickly. So it seems to me that God wanted them to eat the fruit, even though He told them not to do it. Otherwise, that would just not work.
It seems like it was sort of a self-fulfilling prophecy. It's almost like God set up the tree and knew that these two innocent people that had no distinction to judge at that point because they had no knowledge of good and evil. It was sort of a fulfillment to the plan of the salvation that Jesus later gave. I mean, it's part of the whole Christian philosophy, right?
Is it a self-fulfilling prophecy, or does it make more sense, according to my theology, that this is just playing out what God already knew had happened?
It's almost like He's a paradoxical God. It's almost like he wants things that are sort of paradoxical to His own nature in certain ways.
When you use that voice, Heather, you want to punch kittens.
Did you say you want to punch kittens?
Yes, when you use that voice.
Holy crap! I want to make you punch kittens. Shut up, Nate.
Yeah. Run, kitty, run.
Yeah.
Okay, I have to take a break. But hang out in an hour. Tune in.
Cool. Yeah. Thanks for coming in.
All right. Post me the link, Nate. Love you.
Yeah.
Is MG
I don't really
coming in?
find this.
Yeah, I think MG was trying to join in, but we're full right now.
I was gonna say something, but he left already. But what I was gonna say is, imagine this asshole parent who has been promising his child to go watch a certain movie, but he doesn't want to go. So what he does is he sets up this thing where he tells the child, I'm going to put a toy right here in front of you, but you're not going to touch it. Don't touch the toy. and then he goes away, and then of course the child is young, he's innocent, and he touches the toy, and then the parent, the asshole parent, comes back and says, what did you do? I told you not to touch the toy. Now because of that, we're not gonna go watch that movie I promised that we would go watch. That's how I personally
see it. I personally don't find Genesis all that problematical. I mean, it's an allegory for a few different things on top of each other.
I think it's highly problematic if you take it literally.
Yes.
Which is the problem.
Here's the thing: if you don't take Genesis literally, and Adam and Eve did not really exist, a lot of Christians would say that the New Testament is literal. Now, if you open up the book of Luke and you look at the genealogy of Jesus, you see that it goes all the way back to Adam and Eve. So that means that genealogy is just bullshit.
Hold on. It starts from Joseph. You realize, right? The genealogy of Jesus starts from Joseph. Now, if Joseph wasn't his actual biological father, why does both genealogies in Matthew and in Luke stem from Joseph?
Because. And that's all because the various Gospels are disagreeing on even the virgin birth.
So there you go. One.
Yeah, I mean the Gospels that are giving genealogies of Joseph are not claiming virgin birth and so on.
Yeah. Oh, and the Gospel that does talk about the virgin birth is well, two things. First of all, it got the idea of the virgin birth from the Septuagint, which is the Greek translation of the Old Testament. And the Septuagint contains a translation error because instead of translating from the Hebrew for young woman, it translated to virgin, which are two different things. Now the Hebrews that can read the ancient writings, they know it was the prophecy was not talking about a virgin, but they knew it was talking about a young woman. So they didn't do their research very well.
Yeah.
John reputedly was more sophisticated than the others.
There we go.
Yeah, there's I don't find a great deal of difficulty with a liberal Christian standpoint that sees the New Testament's genealogies as same kind of exaggerated claim or whatever as you get for about any hero or whatever. I mean, Julius Caesar and Alexander the Great were claimed to be virgin births at various points. I mean, this is
it was a popular theme.
We literally have the names of their mothers. So there's
it was a popular theme at the time.
Yeah.
Now imagine 1,000 years from now, somebody finds an old copy of a vampire novel and starts a religion based on that. Of course, that kind of like New Age religion that happens all the time, but they don't know that nowadays vampires are really much in fashion, and there's like so many different vampire movies, series, and books and stuff like that. So they think it's like the shit, and it's really novel and different, but it's not really.
Wait. Are you saying the vampires aren't real? Oh, fuck.
It depends by what's your definition of vampire?
Dracula.
Do they sparkle?
My lawyer is a vampire, but.
So yeah, I had to eject a couple people just to make some more spots to get some new people in. But it looks like I got some good ones. We got Chris Mowdy and Mark. I'm not sure who Mark is, but he looks like a cool guy.
Any Christians?
I don't think so.
Yes, I believe the Lord Jesus Christ is my Savior, and all you heathens are going to hell, and the Bible is the written word of God. All right? And straight right here and right now. G-Man is my inspiration for being a better Christian. So we all need to get on our knees, like he said in his recent rap video, and pray. So I'm going to go to Home Depot right now and go get some knee pads, and they got 2 for $1. So if you all want some too, we can go get all knee pads. We can start this praying thing right now.
That's not what I usually
Sounds like a full-time job there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to have to drop off. Have a good one, everyone. Thanks for the
All right.
chat.
Yeah, take care.
All right, keep going, John. Oh yeah. I think there's plenty of space in liberal Christianity to deal with a non-literal Genesis. The idea that these genealogies of Joseph don't somehow make a dependency on a literal Genesis. Never mind a few other allusions to Adam and Eve and the creation story. Is basically just like ridiculous. I mean, you can say that it's alluding to an allegory. You can say that it's some kind of bolstering claim that's peripheral to the actual religious claim, and it doesn't matter. All right, sorry, Chris.
Oh, Chris just came in and then waved goodbye with his fancy setup. So special.
Yeah.
I've seen some Calvinists go over a number of dependencies in the Gospels on the so-called or supposedly literal Genesis, and they refer to Genesis and allude to it, but even so, I mean, liberal interpretations can deal with all of that.
So it looks like we have Mark joined, and then God, my computer is so glitchy right now. Dragon.
This hangout was like, well, I don't know. Maybe I think this is probably a different hangout.
Mark, are you drunk?
No, for once, not. I should be. But is this that hangout that had 10 people in it?
We had 9 earlier. We didn't have anybody too exciting on this one. I think my last one with Veckel was more fun, and I think Veckel's listening, but you should jump in.
Yes. I don't know if you actually know me, FX X2023. I'm me, Mark, Veckel, G-Man. We all have conversations sometimes. I know most of the people in here, including Nadia, licking the whatever the fuck that is right now. But I actually haven't gotten a chance to talk to you. But somebody recommended me to check out some of your videos, though. They said you actually have pretty good arguments and shit.
Yeah. You're not really a theist, though. It looked by the.
It's the Haagen-Dazs of hasty generalization.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. You looked at my setup thing down here.
Right. Well, and your on your knees comment was a little too obvious.
Hey, you got to be on your knees for Jesus. That's where he wants you. Okay. That's the best place for you to be when he comes.
You know Pozla, right? You know Pozla?
The second coming?
You never know. Maybe he is a Christian. I don't know.
I don't know. He's not wearing a shirt. I don't know what that's about.
Oh.
You gotta get used to that. I live in the desert. It's hot as fuck here, so I probably won't have a shirt on most of the time that I'll be in hangouts.
Fair enough.
Yeah,
fair enough.
I could really use the opportunity to cool off a bit more myself. Like I'm really dying of the heat here.
Without a shirt is how I greet my Jehovah's Witnesses that come knocking on my door.
Oh, Beckel said he is listening, so.
Oh, hey, Buckle. I ain't talked to him in a while. He's one of the few theists that I actually talk to. He and I will kind of get into it as far as having a civil discourse. He's not G-Man level, just batshit crazy and dishonest. So that is one of the things I will say as far as his rapport. But I wanted to ask JD a question, but he somewhere fapping. There's a theist on my Facebook that's actually posed a question of chirality, and he claims that there's an issue with chirality and somehow it disproves evolution. Even though I had never heard of chirality or never had seen any type of academic, I guess.
I believe it's pronounced chirality.
Chirality? Okay, here you go. See, I don't know how to fucking pronounce it.
What is
never
it?
heard the shit.
Some chemical structures are innately either left or right-handed, and their handedness is their chirality. Things that are isomers or whatever, apart from differing chirality, are called enantiomers. And the chirality of DNA is not particularly remarkable. And just by chance it came out one way or another, and so on.
I do love people who think that's like a one-word answer to debunking abiogenesis. Oh yeah, well, chirality. Like,
is this all fair?
Is it?
Are we on an off-air hangout now?
No, it's still live.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
I just zoned out for a while. I've been trying to find some theists, and my computer's so slow right now that it's driving me batshit.
Do you have any of them on Skype?
I never use Skype, so...
there's your problem. Most of them are on Skype. Bible thumping wingnut, G-Man.
You know what? Let's do it. Let's do a fun little thing. Okay. Let's go through our deconversion stories.
Oh fuck.
That might take a while.
Oh come on! Let's have some fun.
Where did the preacher touch you?
Exactly. Where did he touch you? I'll tell you where he touched me.
I never deconverted either. I've always been an atheist as well.
Yeah, no, Lyrical. Yeah, you're leaving two people out of this conversation.
I'm sorry. Who am I leaving out? Oh,
me and Nadia.
You were never a
Nadia
Christian.
and I. You gotta be correct there.
Okay, is that because you were never a Christian? Is that what your problem is?
Yeah, we don't have a deconversion. We're just always atheists. Fair.
Oh, well, you're not
wanna
really
be a Christian
technically
so I
an
can
atheist at that. You're technically a... You're nothing. You're a...
Nothing, you're navel lint.
You're not an atheist.
Oh, yeah?
Atheist.
Well,
because you
Cadbury
cannot
here,
be an atheist
and you don't, so.
unless you deny a certain existence of God, but you don't even understand what God is. Oh, how sad you are.
Yeah, don't you know that the atheists, what happens is they get into a big personal problem. Somebody dies or whatever, and then they hate God, and that's why they decide to become an atheist. Of course. So.
And may I point out, the Haagen-Dazs of hasty generalization is in full effect right here, right now.
Hey, I'm going to challenge you on that and tell you the Baskin Robbins fucking... Actually, no, not even Baskin. Cold Stone is the best ice cream out there. They could make shit ice cream, and it's still going to be better than Haagen-Dazs. Just saying.
Alright, so I just made a bunch of room, so if any actual theists want to jump in here.
You know what, though? Grater's. It's a local thing for me. Grater's ice cream is so good. It has 0 air in it. They just stir it. And man, it's so rich. You think gelato's good with its 30% air. I've tried no air.
Yeah, I don't really keep up on the air in my ice cream, but maybe I should. Oh my god.
I don't give a damn. I can't taste the difference.
Mm.
You know, ice cream is ice cream. Who cares?
Have you had Grater's before?
Not that I know of.
I've never heard of that. Well, I didn't hear In-N-Out Burger until I came to California. I didn't know what the fuck that was either.
It's a Cincinnati brand, and like in the surrounding area, but that's about it. Oh, they also have it in Florida because so many people in Cincinnati moved to Florida. They even have a Skyline down there. It's a special kind of chili that's only has in Cincinnati.
Yeah, In-N-Out Burger is way overrated, I have to say.
Yeah, I mean, it's something having like freshly made burgers and stuff like that is fairly new to me. I grew up in the South, especially like Louisiana, Mississippi. You don't have anything like that. They have the shit you pull out the freezer and they throw it in the grill and hope they don't fucking spit in it. That's the standard quality, that you're kind of used to. So for me, this is like, oh shit, hey, they're making it fresh. They cut potatoes. I mean, they're ordering it. They're cooking it to order. Man, the only thing that I've actually had close to that is Raising Cane's, and that's Texas, Louisiana. I think there's a few in Mississippi, but it's a big Louisiana chicken strip chain.
Yeah, we have one in Colorado too.
Oh, really? See,
and
there you
one
go.
in Las Vegas, and
I'm from Canada, and I don't know any of those.
well, that's a problem right there.
Yes.
Anyway, you should look up air and ice cream. It kind of explains how they do it. Most of the major brands is about 50%. They air it up to make it creamier. Some of the lower fat ones, what they do is just add more air rather than change the recipe. When you start getting the ones that are only in pints, like not Haagen-Dazs specifically, but like Ben & Jerry's, they start dropping the content. Gelato has less, and also has a slightly different recipe. And then you get into some local brands where they don't put air at all; they just stir, which case there's no air, and it becomes extremely rich. It's like eating butter and sugar together. It's wonderful and terrible for you, but wonderful.
Oh.
One of the greatest ones, a quarter cup, like a single serving size, a half cup, is 360 calories, 24 grams of fat. That's an ice cream.
Holy shit.
It's like, how'd they do that? Well, there's no air, so it's like compacted down. And oh man, it's good.
Oh,
concentrated sugar
Graders
fat.
especially, they'll take, instead of having like chocolate chips in there, they actually take like huge big chunks of chocolate and just let the stir crunch it up. So sometimes you'll get like chocolate chips that are like yay big, like half the container is like this huge chocolate chip that got stuck in there. It's just awesome local stuff.
Sounds really insane.
Oh, it's wonderful.
I'm mostly eating it to try to cool off.
Box fan.
So where are you guys located? Just curious.
Yeah. No.
Secret military base in the Mojave Desert.
Oh, nice. So are you in the military, or?
Yep.
I would always say that. I think it's self-evident.
Well, there's contract.
I was bored. I like the desert.
Yeah.
I'm of course from Canada, from Ottawa, which is the capital, and here I would definitely be wearing a shirt at this time.
I'm in Ohio and Cincinnati, like the border of like Indiana and Kentucky.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm obviously in Denver, Colorado. Hence my logo. But
the periodic table of elements?
Yeah.
It's a Denver thing?
Well,
I was taking a chemistry class, and something in my head, I was like, well, if I have this periodic table on my wall, I'm just going to memorize it somehow. I'll become a chemistry expert, but I don't think that really worked out. I also have an evolutionary poster, so I can always reference that quickly.
I moved from East Harlem in New York City to Oakland, California in September, and, well, Oakland sucks.
Oh, yes. Yeah, so I guess this hangout's totally gotten off topic. I might jump out of here in about 20 minutes if we don't get any more theists in. But I was really excited. I thought they were ready for evolution, but I'm guessing...
It's hard. It's hard to get creationists to I mean, unless you go search them out yourself, it's hard to get them to come to you. Cause,
yeah.
I mean, they get crushed every time. I mean, even people like MG42, I think somewhere in the back of his mind he knows he's not performing well, despite that he's repeating what he believes, and he sincerely believes that he realizes it's not going over well.
Yeah, it's jumping in the lion's den, really.
Well, I mean, even if we're really nice about it, the fact is they're just wrong on everything. They can't demonstrate that their claims are true. They can only say, well, the Bible says this and this, and I believe it, and I've read these creationist sites that say that science is wrong, and so I'll repeat that. And they can't really understand the stuff, because once you understand the stuff, you accept the stuff. The number of biologists who have advanced degrees and do not accept evolution, you can like damn near count on one hand. So.
Yeah, and the frustration always talking to these guys is they're so comfortable making blanket assertions, and if you let them just keep going on, they just mention like 20 things that are just completely wrong. And whenever you try to, explain evolution the correct way, they get so frustrated and saying you're arrogant and you're using big words and
you're
some of them are like, I get that one a lot. Well, usually on Facebook, I'll have like the one word, what was it, chirality? Chirality? Chirality, chimeras, okay. I have guys like throw that shit at me. It's like, I've never heard of this, and I was kind of skeptical as to, why I'd never heard of this, and as it turns out, as JD said, it's just one of those one-word answers that they throw out because they really don't understand what's going on, but they'll pick one subject or a piece of something that they can somewhat grasp and then assert based on their own ignorance. So, but you'll get a few that actually have sat and studied. Like I said, let's say again, Veckel, he's actually sat and studied. I want to say his forte is genes and the different makeup of genes, and so he forms his argument around that. Now, personally, I think he formed his argument based on the presupposition that his God already exists and that science is incorrect. But he's using science to prove his presupposition. He didn't first study it, come to the conclusion after testing it and after any type of rigorous process, or anything. So that's where I find a lot of their fault, and so that's why I really try to only speak to theists who come up with half decent conversations and half decent arguments, and not random fucking G-man bullshit like you can't disprove that my God doesn't exist, and what did he come up with? His ace in the hole was, well, there's so many Christians, there has to be a God. That's not a logical fallacy, though. I'm like, dude, really? Why would you mention the amount of people?
I hereby declare this is not an argument from popularity, because I've totally just said it isn't. And that
wait. I agree with G-Man, okay, that Christianity is real based on the fact that so many people believe in it, but of course it's not any kind of Christianity. It's of course Catholicism. Is the Catholics. Those are the true religion. All the other religions are not good because they don't have enough people in them.
I mean, that's a really popular tactic they like to use. They like to point out the fallacy they're using in their argument, in the presentation of their argument, as though that's off the table now. Like, I know you're going to say this is an argument from, popularity, and then I'm going to go ahead and make an argument from popularity. I mean, it's almost like
the G-Man thing.
I got a better one for you, man. I'm gonna have to call you Freed because that's too many letters and numbers together. So
that's fine.
Freed, check this out. I don't know how long you've been dealing with G-Man. I've known this dude for several months. His latest thing is now at the tip of everybody's lips. Well, it was last week. He actually made a video and declared that he was an atheist. Now, all of us who are skeptics actually were like, that's bullshit. And some of the non-skeptical skeptics, welcome to the fold, guy. Ha 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 ha. Pat him on the back.
Hey.
I
was fooled.
Yeah, I know. That's why I'm calling you out. Everybody can fucking get it. So, but check this out, dude. I knew what it was. I knew it was some kind of tactic that he wanted to use for a new argument. So I said, I'll sit back and wait. And he admitted he was acting. He was acting. Here's his logic. Here's his mindset. He wanted to portray himself as an atheist so no one could ever use the no true Scotsman fallacy against him ever again, thereby making him immune to that particular fallacy.
I know. I mean, I actually talked to him the next day. He came out, and the first hangout I put on this channel, and the funny thing is that totally backfired in his face. He basically showed that, atheists are pretty open to people, even like G-Man. Most of the comments on there were positive to him, and the funny thing is, Look, I didn't really necessarily think he's being honest, but you know what? What if he really was? So I gave him the benefit of the doubt. It's not common for Christians to really go out and let people challenge them on such a regular basis. And he's heard so many of these arguments. It's not really outside the realm of possibility. I mean, I think somewhere deep inside, G-Man kind of knows there really isn't a God. I think
it's hard. He knows in his heart that there is no God.
I mean,
he's suppressing it. He's suppressing the truth.
Right. Yeah. I mean, the
truth. But I mean, I was convinced. I was convinced that he was telling the truth. I'll say right up front. I thought he was.
I feel like selling you some magic beans now, JD.
Well, I mean, there were some reasons for it. There were some reasons for it. One of them, I thought his performance was good. He did a good acting job in that. And the most important one is and this is kind of somewhat in defense. I overestimated him. I thought that he's got to be telling the truth because there's no upside for this if it turns out he's lying.
There's a few things.
He can make it look good. He's either completely retarded.
He's a better actor.
When he says he's lying, people are going to go like,
he's a better
"Oh my
actor
God,
than
you
he is
moron,"
a rapper.
you know?
He's a better actor than he is a rapper.
I thought through in my head, like, if he's lying, well, the atheists are going to look great because most of us will be like, dude, we're welcome to the fold. We're glad. We know this is a tough transition. All the atheists can be nice to him. The theists, the more liberal theists aren't going to mind. The more fundies are going to turn on him, which the ones who weren't in on it, like Shani as me, did. And then once he says a lie, then everyone's going to turn on him from all sides. It's going to be a whole clusterfuck. So it's more likely he's telling the truth. Turns out, nope, he's fucking retarded. So.
Yes, I would have to agree with you on that. And he gets mad when I mention education in black community because I kind of give him this side-eye look, like, like I'm talking to you. But I never overtly said, I can't say it. I've alluded very much that a lot of his choice has to do with ignorance, and that he himself admitted that he doesn't have the best education. And I said, I understand. I am from the lower pits of Louisiana.
Wait a sec. G-Man doesn't have a good education? No.
Yeah, hey, I hate to break it to everybody. It happens. And like I say, I understand. I moved around too, and I had the lower Louisiana, Mississippi education, and I took the time to actually educate myself. I taught myself calculus a few months ago. So I could actually start learning. Yeah, I mean, that's just fucking hard.
10 points, bro.
But it's it's a process. But it takes an inquisitive mind and a lot of effort to break free from religion and how it blinds folks. And what I was saying on my channel a lot is that religion holds back the black community a lot. It really, people don't see the intricacies that goes on, and it's how it warps the mindsets and gives people this transparent promise. So the focus is not on uplifting oneself and obtaining an education and trying to get to that next level for the next generation. They're preparing for fucking Armageddon.
That pillow is attacking you right now.
Yeah, that's my son doing that.
That pillow wants to assimilate you right now.
Yeah, I have a question.
Say E to the X sign XDX.
Oh.
Yay.
Do you think that black people are more prone to? He's like, oh no, yeah.
Tread lightly.
Prone to fundamentalism than more liberal forms of Christianity. I ask this because this is just an anecdote in real life. My mother goes to a very liberal Protestant church, and you wouldn't believe this, but Living Waters wants to join to pay to go to their church on particular days. Living Waters is Ray Comfort's church, so you suspect it's pretty fundamentalist. Turns out, though, pretty much the entire community, it's an entirely only black people go to this particular church, and it seems to be that at least I've been to a lot of churches that are entirely African American, but it does seem to be that there's a lot more fundamentalist take to it.
There is. It's really ingrained into it's ingrained into the community, man. I grew up with a very religious family. My uncle actually has his own big church thing, and his sons have done missionary work. You name it, they've done it. They do their own gospel songs, and in particular, when I lived in North Carolina, I went to a Pentecostal church that was mostly African American, black, whatever. That shit doesn't offend me, but it was really, really telling as to the mindset of the individuals in there, as to their goals in life, their personal beliefs, their religious beliefs, their wants and needs. Everything revolved around church. They inserted it into everything possible. Even if you could ask them the weather, it was, oh yeah, it's a beautiful sunny day, thank God he made it this way, and you could not have a conversation without them injecting it. So it's malicious. It really is.
Speaking of injecting,
yeah. When I start talking about the end of days.
Your kid's adorable back there.
I know. This is what you say. He's having too much fun zipping around back there.
Flinging
this
things
is
around.
what happens when soldiers breed. But it's But it gets really scary.
I mean, I have to make one point. One of the biggest reasons I came onto YouTube was this repeated thing. There's not enough black atheists out there. Why are there no black atheists and all that? And I guess there's a certain frustration from my point of view that I don't want to be a black atheist. I want to be an atheist. I don't want to be this subgroup of atheists that I have to account for.
Actually, you know what? Hold on. Neil deGrasse Tyson, Cosmos. There you go.
He's agnostic.
Well, he's agnostic. He's not atheist.
Oh,
so he says, but yeah, he's an atheist.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's such a thing as an agnostic atheist. So
yeah, well, he doesn't care about the terminology. He's busy doing astrophysics. So.
That's the thing.
I do think he is an atheist, though, even though he says he's agnostic.
Well, if you there's a clip of him, and what he says is he doesn't have an issue with the technical definition of an atheist. He's not saying that technically he's not an atheist. He's saying he doesn't want to be identified with those who call themselves atheists as a label. He doesn't want to adopt the label. So in every way that matters, yes, he's an atheist. He just doesn't want to use the word, and that doesn't really bother me. I kind of get his point.
You know, it doesn't. I call him by what he chooses to be called.
And no, I understand what he's saying because that label still has a lot of negative connotation, especially from the Cold War era and communism. So that's still kind of fresh in the minds of the older generation of baby boomers and such. But that's your somewhat history lesson for the day. But Freed, I wanted to specifically talk about this, which I guess you perceive, what a lot of people perceive as, this subset of black atheists. Hold on. Hey, give me a break. So I'm guessing you're not a part of the black atheists or black non-believers groups on Facebook or anything like that.
See, I'm a mixed race person. My father was from Africa. My mom is from Kansas. So I have grown up exclusively in probably 95% white communities, and my whole life I've gotten this. Oh, you're speaking white. You're doing this or that, and it's a frustration that I'm supposed to somehow identify with people I don't necessarily know. I identify black people because I am a black person or mixed race, but it's frustrating that I'm supposed to be categorized in this special group of atheists, and that I somehow have to explain or account for the reason why there are not more of us.
I mean, that's just a part of the game, man. I'll tell you honestly, I understand, though, your struggle because I'm Creole, if you understand that particular history.
Right.
But I definitely understand where you're coming from, and I identify myself not really as an atheist, but as a secular humanist. When somebody asks me what my race is, I'll tell them black, but I identify myself as Creole because I treasure ethnicity over race. But I cannot deny the role that my race has in society and as far as my personal beliefs, goals, and aspirations. So when someone asks me, okay, you're an atheist, you go to Skep Defense show, you're on the Magic Sandwich show, you're in the Black Atheist group and Black Non-Believers group. Why is that? Well, what a lot of people don't see is that there are still many issues that plague our American society as far as intersectionality, and that's the inclusion of minority issues and any kind of minorities into the mainstream. And you actually see this with feminism as well. Feminism is
Kimberly Crenshaw.
Exactly.
Kimberly Crenshaw. Yeah.
Exactly.
I'm all about it. Yeah.
So yeah, you're tracking exactly what I'm talking about, and that's why there's a separate offshoot of womanism, and that's black feminists, because there evidently is an issue with, like I said, inclusion of minority issues. So when we see groups like Black Atheists, Black Non-Believers, of different chapters and stuff like that, it's because there's not an inclusion in the mainstream movement for minorities and minority issues. So that's something that needs to be addressed. If we all want to, sit together and sing Kumbaya, we have to acknowledge everyone on the same level before we get to that.
I mean, I guess.
Intercategorical. Yeah, intercategorical complexity is fundamental to dismantling the matrix of domination, anyway. So.
I do hope that racism finally gets kind of smashed out the further we go along. I think evolution can actually help with that. Once we're like, dude, we're all from Africa. These differences are so small.
There's there's a video on Netflix where I forget what it's called, but there's a street fair or something, and these people took 200 or like 100 random people and did the cottonmouth swab, and they actually traced all of their lineages back 200,000 generations to Africa. It was pretty amazing, and some of them were actually related in like a very distant past. It was pretty neat.
That's pretty cool.
Probably 200,000 years. 200,000 years is where the chromosome 2 fusion event was reputed to have happened.
No, but
80,000 gets you to Africa, but yeah, you can go back even further.
no, generations. So 200,000 generations is what it is. Not years, but by popping out babies.
Whoa, generations? That's...
Yeah, 200,000
You don't even
generations.
go that far. That's pretty impressive.
I guess my only criticism is I just feel sometimes that the things that were being said was that as a person who's black or half white or whatever I am, I have some obligation to explain why there are not more black people. I have no clue. I have not lived in a black community. I cannot tell you. Maybe other black people can explain why there are not more, but I from what I see, it seems like it's a cultural thing. A lot of black people live in the South, and if you look at a lot of white people in the South, you kind of see the same trends.
Well, yeah, and that's you're gonna get that, man. I mean, hold on. Okay, let me give you. Okay, here we go. You're gonna have to.
I think it's fundamentally linked to urbanization and industrialization.
Yeah, so then we get into gentrification too, which that we need a whole nother hangout to talk about that one.
Yeah.
But
You guys know we have a new member to the hangout. Hey, Tanya.
Hey, everybody. How's
is
it
that
going?
Galaxy Dream? Oh, hey. Yeah, you were trying to get me kicked out of the hangout Brett King the other day. How are you doing?
I did. I'm doing good.
Yeah, I remember that. That's okay.
It does not take much effort to get thrown out of a Keen hangout. Just
Oh yeah, me and Brett Keane have gone back and forth. I had to school him on evolution and the anatomy of Australopithecus.
Oh yeah,
Drag,
how many
drag, don't
generations
even
were there
bother.
between fish and people?
42.
42. Yeah.
Actually, 7.
Hey, can I ask you guys an evolution question?
Oh, please,
JD,
ask us
JD, answer it.
anything you want.
Okay. And it's probably going to sound stupid because I really don't know a whole lot about it, to be honest with you.
We'll be gentle.
Okay. Be gentle.
Fresh fish.
Okay, so, all this time in between transitions and whatnot, is there any other reason besides carbon dating and the fact that the fossils and stuff were buried so far in the ground? Is there anything besides those two reasons that you guys think that there was so much time?
Well, carbon dating doesn't really relate to evolution because carbon dating is probably at best only good back to 40,000 years.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And plus, every fossil that's found is a transitional fossil. We are transitional fossils. I mean, every... Yeah, I mean, what are we transitioning to? Who the hell knows? You can't really predict it in that sense, but...
Yeah. So Richard Dawkins had a very good analogy that he used. And imagine you have a picture book, a picture book of your ancestors, and it goes. You have one picture of you and there on the last page, and then your parents on the previous page, and then your grandparents on the previous page, and then it goes on and on like that for millions of pages. What will happen is you will be very hard. It will be very hard for you to notice any difference from one picture to another. But then if you go back a whole bunch of pages, like 100,000 pages, then you'll see a big difference between the two. And that's what they mean by evolution, is changes over time in the physiognomy of a person. And if you go back a whole lot more, you're gonna see some living things that are very, very different from humans. And as a matter of fact, we don't have all the pictures. We have more and more pictures because we're finding more and more fossils, but we're lacking some of the pictures, of course. And every time we find one picture in the picture book, that creates two gaps on each side of that picture. So that's normal.
And one other thing I'd have to say about that is with evolution, we're kind of playing Monday morning quarterback. It's not as though we're looking at something that has an intent to turn into something else. Sure, millions of years after the fact, we can say, well, yeah, of course, this is going to lead to whatever animal exists today. But generation by generation, there's no direction for where it's going. It's just how these animals change. And after the fact, we can kind of feel as though they were intended to become a certain way, but they really could have. If we go back far enough, there's no reason to think that plants and animals and fungi were a guaranteed thing. We could be left with other types of multicellular life that are completely unique.
Right.
But,
and the only direction to evolution is from the environment, and that's why you see some species of fish that are similar in form to some mammals like whales.
I wouldn't say the environment was the only one, because you do have, JD, feel free to correct me, you have bias mutation, whereas an animal or an organism can actually influence its own evolution through, necessitated through whatever it encounters throughout its throughout its generation.
Yeah.
Right, there's things like sexual selection. I mean, sometimes, just certain animals are attracted to other animals. It's not necessarily linked to fitness. The color of a bird's feathers aren't necessarily adding to the fitness. It probably makes it easier for them to be eaten by predators, but that's what the girl birds like.
Yeah.
But it looks like we got a couple. Looks like we have a couple more Christians who just joined in.
Aaron.
We got Matt Bell. I'm not sure about Lee. I think Lee might be, and we got Aaron.
Yeah.
So,
I did want to jump in on carbon dating, because you mentioned carbon dating. Carbon dating obviously isn't used to date fossils or anything, because the fossils are mineralized bones, so there's no carbon in them. What they do, but carbon dating is actually a form of radiometric dating, that you're dating an isotope with a certain half-life. When you go further back in the record, you have to use other methods like argon, because it lasts for millions of years to billions of years. So you can get a better idea of how old it is. It isn't specifically used to date fossils. It really dates the geological column, and certain parts of the geological column have certain fossils in them. And you can tell, every time one of the reasons you can tell that radiometric dating works is you'll find, let's say, a column of rock that has a Tyrannosaurus Rex in it, and you date it at 65 to 70 million years. Now that's out of a possible 2 million to 5 billion that the radiometric method can produce, but it comes out with 70. And then you use a different method with a different half-life, let's say 30 million to 50 billion, and it also comes to 70 million years. You then do this again when you find another Tyrannosaurus Rex fossil, and you're like, okay, lo and behold, the same thing happens. It comes out the exact same thing you'd expect. And so that's how we know. I mean, before we even had radiometric dating, they just used the faunal succession, where you had flowers and fauna that you would form like a vertical line. You would expect them always in particular geological column. You didn't really worry about the age of it, but you could see the succession. You could see how things changed the further down in the record you go, the further down in the rock you go.
Right, JD's completely right, and that's how we had the names of all these layers before we even had solid dates for them. Like the names Cretaceous and Jurassic, all that all existed before we even. I mean, they're estimates for how old they were, but they were wildly off. But
yeah, I think I could accept what you guys are saying, and actually maybe even accept evolution if what you're saying is true. If we have, I mean, we would have to have tons of fossils. I mean,
we do.
Millions of them
We do.
to
We
even
do.
We have
trillions. No, that was a.
Yeah, we have.
Not trillions. The thing is, fossilization is relatively rare. I mean, most times when things die, they get eaten by predators. They simply decay and break apart. And so that's why fossilization is a rare event. That's why we only see so many fossils. It's also why, with the advent of genetics, the fossil record is all but ignored for most people. That is, look at the genetics. According to was the head of the Genome Project, Francis Collins, said that the genetic evidence alone is enough to confirm common ancestry. You don't need the fossil record. That is consistent with it, but it's not unnecessary.
Yeah.
Right.
I will give you this, Tanya. Thank you so much for asking open-ended questions. I'm so used to
And being honest.
Fundamentalist creationists who ask questions that they think they know the answer to, and they don't respond. You actually asked a question we could answer quite easily, and I thank you for that. That was awesome.
Hey, no problem.
It's so rare. It's so rare to get a nice open question where you can expound on the subject without. Well, there's no new information, or you hear an argument that's kind of canned. So.
I mean, you got it just right. Fossilization is very rare, and we overwhelmingly tend to find fossils where there are mountain building events going on. So that's why in Colorado and Montana you find a lot of larger dinosaur fossils, because back in that time there were a lot of rivers going around. There were a lot of places where an animal could quickly be buried. There may have been just as many, if not more, dinosaurs in other areas. They were just in more arid areas where they're less likely to be fossilized. They're going to be eaten by predators. They're going to be weathered down to dust before there's a chance for them to be preserved. But this is a classic argument from creationists. Why aren't there more fossils? And the funniest thing is there are tons of fossils, and I feel like a broken record. They just claim there are no fossils. Weird.
Well, you know what they do is they'll turn around and say that the rapid burial is due to Noah's flood.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I've heard.
The fall succession doesn't make any sense. Like, why would they be layered like that?
Yeah, and then that's kind of if you look at the geological column, you see that at the very old layers, organisms tend to be microbial and just relatively simple, and they get more and more complex as you go up the ladder.
I mean, there's like an entire 2 billion or 2.5 billion period in the fossil record, or just in the geological column, where the only thing you find, you have to have a microscope to find it, because it's all single-celled stuff.
Right, and we also have to account for the fact that there are plate tectonics, and a lot of the Earth has been subducted. So even if there were fossils in that material, it's been destroyed. The Earth kind of refreshes its surface. So you have to look in specific areas of the Earth to really find those really old rocks. Like I said, where there are mountains that are built up, and they can kind of stay above that subduction area.
You mean like Mount Everest?
Well, Mount Everest is funny because
clams are up there. There's giant clams.
Mount Everest is a fairly young mountain in geologic times. See, Colorado is a fun area because we have examples of the Rockies have grown more than one time. They built up, they eroded all the way down to nothing, and then they built back up again.
They eroded?
Yeah.
I didn't really.
Obviously.
Well, I knew that the Rockies were younger than, what is it, the Appalachian Mountains?
Yeah, those are really.
Yeah, see, I know that those are old because they're relatively, or extremely weathered, but I had no idea that the Rockies have been, eroded down and brought back up again. I learned something today.
Well, the Himalayas, I believe, are only about 60 million years old. It was like the India plate hit the Asian plate and then propped them up relatively recently, right after the dinosaurs died, kind of.
I mean, a quick way to guess the age of a mountain is pointiness, which is kind of deceptive because glaciers cause that as well, but older mountains get rounded off by weathering and rain and all that types of things.
I thought you just count the rings.
Well, it's interesting. I think some people who don't know a lot about science kind of think that geologists are making this up. Like when you see that video on YouTube where it shows what things were like 500 million years ago, they're like, oh, they're just guessing, they're making stuff up. But really, geologists. I mean, there's a lot of work in geology that people study, physics of how these things form and what evidence they leave behind. That they can actually make these kind of reproductions of how the continents moved.
Well, if I can, real quick.
Plate tectonics is very well understood.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, if I can, real quick.
Still just a theory.
I totally get what you're saying, and here's my question. Now, you said there's lots of layers. That is true, there is. Now, how do we know how long is there a way to determine how long each layer was around? Like, for example, was one layer, 10 million years ago, and then the next layer, each layer lasts. How long does each layer last? Do you see what I'm saying?
I mean, there are places in Grand Canyon where entire layers have eroded over time. So you've got really old layers and you've got relatively new layers. You're missing everything in between because it eroded. But what you need in geology is a stopwatch. You need some process that marks a starting point, and from then on you can count something. And one of the big ones is zircons. They take in uranium, and it decays to lead. So it forms a crystallized structure. So once you have the zircon form, based on what is left in it, how old that piece of rock is when it cooled, you form that zircon.
Yeah, so it's the nice thing about this is it's very hard to contaminate because it's very, very solid.
Yeah, and I have to point out one other thing. It has to be a certain type of rock. You can't date a it has to be an igneous rock. You can't date a sedimentary rock based on a zircon because you don't know where that came from. You have to use other things, which you can. I mean, you can find remnants from volcanoes. There are ways to date it, but the way you date that middle layer is you date the one above it, you date the one below it, and you know that layer in between has to fit between those 2 points that you establish. But it's not like geologists can look at you. If you hand a geologist a rock, they can't really necessarily tell you anything about it. I mean, they can't tell you how old, depending on the rock. It has to be a very special.
Most of the dating methods that you've probably heard of, like argon, potassium argon, and whatnot. What you have to do is you have to zero the clock, and the easiest way to do that is after an eruption, because once the molten rock forms, that starts a lot of different clocks. For instance, argon is a very rare gas, and any argon that would be in the rock wouldn't necessarily have fizzed out of it like Coke, fizzing out of a bottle. And so with reasonable certainty that there's any argon in there is the result of decay of potassium. I think it's potassium 20 or 40. I have to look it up to be sure. And so that decays at a regular rate. And so you can look, if enough time has passed, there will be measurable amounts of argon. You can tell how much there was versus how much potassium in there, how old that particular rock is. And there are other methods, and most of them, like I said, you can apply usually several different methods that all have that require different decay rates and different levels of assumption. And if they all come up with the same date, you're on the right track.
Well, the problem is that they'll use the degrees of accuracy against itself and say, oh, well, see, they're not saying with absolute certainty that it's its exact date. I mean, they give themselves a margin of error, therefore it completely throws out the validity of dating it.
Fuck calculus, right? Just fuck calculus.
Yeah, it's mistaking estimates for fudge factors. Fudge factors is where you deliberately add extra things because you don't really know what because you screwed something up or you're not really sure what it is. Whereas estimates the estimates are actually pretty specific.
Well, the thing is with geology is we rarely use one example to actually date something. It's if you only have one dating method that you're using to date whatever layer, that's not a very solid.
Well, can I stick with this one just for a second because I have a question about it?
Yeah, of course.
Okay. You said that there's something in the layers that we can actually measure. I get that. That makes sense to me. So my question would be, though, since obviously there was no way for us to observe whatever that is that we're testing for that long of a period of time, how is it that we know how long it takes for whatever it's doing that we're measuring? I mean, is there some kind of mathematical formula that's correct every time? I mean, it would have to be, right?
Things tend to decay at a constant.
Okay.
Not even 10, they do. We can test these if you get a large enough quantity.
Yeah. I mean,
okay, so let's look at a nuclear power plant, all right? That uses uranium, right? That decays, and they are able to determine the rate of which that uranium decays in order to apply it. And, we live off that, so it's understood the decay rates of certain things, so we apply that same concept towards other things, in things that are found in rocks, and that's how geologists go about dating.
Yeah, and that's why you want to change your smoke detector once in a few I think it's 10 years, because the radioactive material that's inside will decay, and you have to replace that.
Yeah,
the way it works is kind of like it's like you flip a coin. There may be a 50-50 chance with one flip, but as you add more and more and more and more and more coins, you can pretty accurately assume that the amount of heads you're going to get are going to approach 50%. So when you're looking at like an atom, you've got trillions of atoms. You've got trillions of these coins flipping all at once. So you can easily determine the odds of any particular atom.
More than trillions.
Exactly.
Yeah. But what do you say? Basically, you cannot predict when one atom will decay to its sister element, but you can predict when you may not even be able to predict when a billion do, but when you start getting hundreds of trillions together, you can start you just run the clock, and you can run it as far as, like, depending on how many you have, you run it as far as seconds or hours or days, and you can see the decay rates. And when all those decay rates agree, and of course to make sure that there aren't other factors involved, physicists apply all sorts of ways to try to change the decay rate to confirm that natural causes aren't going to mess with it. Subject it to great heat, to great pressure, to radiation, and see if they can mess with the date. And it's very, very difficult to do. It takes apparently, if I remember correctly, extreme pressure. I mean, like pressure that would kill anything. Can alter the decay rate by like 2%.
Yeah, unless the Earth fell into the sun.
It doesn't really happen unless we're interfering. So, go ahead, FSX.
I was going to say, unless the Earth fell into the core of the sun for a certain period of time in the past, these are probably pretty solid dates.
Also, there's more than one type of date. There's, well, I can't remember all of them off the top of my head, but they all approach the same number when you date, say, the age of the Earth. Based on different dating methods, you get 4.3 billion years, 4.5, 4.6, 4.4, 4.4 and a half. But all these different methods, none of them are ever any way far off. They're all...
the effective pressure on radioactive decay is significant at the core of the Earth.
And it also depends on the sensitivity of the measurement, the utensil you're using to measure that process. If you can devise something that's more sensitive than what you used in the past, well, you can get a more precise date, or you can get a date from less product. So you're not getting anything around 10,000 years. They're all pretty close, and they're all within the right error bars.
Yeah.
They're not exactly 4.5. They're within this range.
If I can anticipate a possible objection, the reason we know this works that way in the past is because radioactive decay is well understood. If decay rates were significantly faster, significantly slower, there are tests you can do to determine that, because that would leave evidence, because the fact that the Earth is still molten in the core is because of radioactive decay. So if the decay rates were much faster, well, if they were fast enough to fit into, say, like the old Earth paradigm, well, the Earth would be a molten plasma. So we would not be here to be discussing this.
Of course, that's all the underlying assumption that's pervading every statement made there is atheists and people relying on the scientific community who claim to have done all this stuff and give us all that information.
All right, but
none of the people in here have actually went and done these tests, have observed these tests.
Well, want to know the great thing? I live 15 miles away from San Onofre, the big booby power plant. That is proof and evidence that radioactive decay has been measured and has been applied.
Yeah, but if you've been in there, for all you know, they're cooking fairy dust in there.
Yeah, exactly.
You don't know.
That's only proof that there's a facility there with scientists telling you that some certain things are happening there. So what we see is we see atheists making all these assertions about what's scientific.
Oh no!
Based on just a reliance.
Okay. No. First of all,
authority. Atheists exercising their faith in science.
No.
Science.
Let him finish. I actually have somebody tell me this today. Let him finish.
Listen.
Well, hold on.
As much as people want to take the designation upon themselves of being an atheist.
Matthew.
No, I'm not finished.
You're wrong on this. Okay, let me explain to you something, okay?
You stating that you're wrong on something doesn't make it wrong.
Matthew, let me correct you on something, okay?
Cool.
Science works with scientific research works with scientific studies. Scientific studies are published in journals.
I'm aware of the peer review process.
Each scientific study is like a recipe. You can follow the recipe. You can come up with the results and you can figure out if the recipe is bullshit or not. And if it is bullshit, you can publish a counter article and get your
the recipe.
Nobel Prize.
Who in here has followed that recipe?
Here, hold on. Another example I'd like to give is, if you guys don't remember, a couple years ago there was an issue at a place called Fukushima. They had a nuclear power plant there. It got crippled, and holy hell, what happened? They were afraid that there's going to be nuclear fallout, and that all stems from decay rates that are measured.
Yeah, that's the claim. Yeah, that's the claim.
That's the go.
You keep referring to the claim, but who in here has followed that recipe?
Well, Matt, what you have to understand, what you have to understand is, I have never
atheist in here has followed any of those recipes.
Hold on, Matt. I have never flown around the Earth.
It's just a claim to authority.
False.
I've never flown around the planet to see that it's round. I have never measured the sun. So, sure. We are relying on experts to do things. We cannot go out and test every single thing in the world. We do have to rely on experts.
All right, it's good to see the admission. It's good to see the admission that
Matthew. Matthew, hold on, Matthew. What you're doing is you are combining the different definitions of faith.
You don't know my definition of faith.
Okay, well, you're making it seem as if we have.
What's my definition of faith?
Matt, I'm answering your question.
Well, give me my definition of faith.
Okay, you're doing a G-man here. You're trying to make it seem like us atheists, and this faith that we have towards authority is some sort of religious conviction.
No, it's not. I never said that. You don't know my definition of faith. You're making an assumption of how I define the word without asking.
Why use the word faith at all?
I know.
Because that's what it is. Because
all right, well, hold on.
The word faith means confident trust in a person, thing, or idea. What's been exhibited here
why don't you use trust?
Because faith is a perfectly good word that atheists want to avoid.
No, it's confusing. You do it on purpose.
It's only confusing. It's only confusing if the person does not clearly define their term. I have clearly defined my term.
And it's only controversial if
FSX, I normally love talking about, but Tanya we were in a lovely conversation with Tanya, and Matt is only going to derail it. If possible, could you airlock him, please?
Well, here's the thing. I just want to say one thing, okay? I'm a scientist. I'm a scientist. I look at
censorship by the
I'm a scientist, okay? I look at scientific studies and I follow the recipes. So you coming in here and telling me that I have trust and I have faith and stuff, it's bullshit. If you think that something science doesn't work, just try it out for yourself.
So what's your field of science then? What's your qualifications and what kind of scientist are you?
I have biology and computer science, and I have engineering.
Biology, computer science, engineering have absolutely nothing to do with geology.
I'm not talking about
again. So
I'm not talking about one single field of science. I'm talking about all fields of science.
Here, hold on, Matt. If something were wrong in any way, shape, or form, would there be practical application to it? Yes or no? Like, if I were to live my life saying
yes, there can be. There can be practical.
So let's say that I'm asserting that 1 + 1 = 5. How far in life do you think I'd get?
Well, that depends on how you're defining those terms. That also depends on what numerical system you're using.
Okay, so if something were wrong,
let's say you're not using binary.
No.
You're Matthew. If something were fundamentally
binary.
If something were fundamentally wrong, there would be no practical application to it.
That doesn't logically follow.
Okay, so
yes, it does.
Yes,
no, it doesn't. Well, show me how it logically follows that something can't be fundamentally wrong, but give practical application.
Okay, you know what? I will give you
that accidentally produce a result. It's called the correlation equals causation fallacy. Just because because you have a correlation between a hypothesis and a result, the correlation does not necessitate causation.
All right, Bill, what is the point point you're trying to make. You claim atheists
I've
have
already made the
faith.
point.
No, they don't.
I've already made
Your weird definition of faith, where you could just say trust.
It's not a weird definition of faith. It's a dictionary definition of faith, which is a standard.
It's a definition you chose on purpose to confuse. You
But
could have used trust, but you decided to use faith because it sounds like, oh, we're no better than you are. That's the key.
Why is it so difficult for us atheists and scientists to admit that we have faith in other scientists? I mean, I don't understand why we're fighting with the word faith here. We do have
because they try to use it as a means of which to invalidate a science. It's like, oh, you have faith. I have faith in my doctor when I go in.
It's because we've heard. Just because I have faith in scientists who are not in my field of science doesn't mean that it invalidates science in any way.
No, it's because we've heard these arguments before, and we are well aware they are setting up a straw man argument. So,
well, what's the straw man argument? Where's the straw man argument?
Well,
the straw man is...
Here, I'll tell you what the straw man argument is. I'll tell you what the straw man argument is.
Why don't we let Aaron jump in for a minute?
No, I'll tell him what the straw man argument is. He's trying to say that I'm doing what he is doing. I am using faith, and he's doing this by defining faith in a way that is convenient for him.
Okay. Okay, so let's examine that charge of a straw man fallacy.
No, let's not. This is irrelevant to the topic we were discussing.
Whose hangout is this? Is this your hangout, GTK?
This is okay. So what I'm saying is fine. If in your opinion, I'm acting on faith. Great. What's your point? Where does that get you?
No, it invalidates you. So you don't want to examine your charge that you just made against me?
I do. You think I'm using... I don't
okay, so this is what happened, okay? I gave a clear definition of faith.
No, Bell, we don't need a blow-by-blow. Make your point.
The point, he said, no.
I'm moderate.
Okay, so can you prevent one of your...
Bell, get to the point.
Can you moderate JD Kane?
I'll fucking moderate a little bit if you want. Get to the point.
FX, are you going to do that?
Quit whining and get to the point.
I'm going to ask the question all the time until...
Just why are you even muting? I beg you. He's not going to stop. He's going to troll his way through here. Just
I posted the definition of faith. Trust or confidence in someone or something.
Let's talk how pathetic guys.
Why are we muting him? I don't understand why you're muting him.
It's only JDK, and that's all he can do.
No, there's no reason to mute him in this conversation.
Trying to make this into an argument rather than actually answer the question.
That's all JDK can do.
Listen, FSX said there was a straw man in there, and that's all Matthew was asking him was what was a straw man, and then you guys started muting him.
Eddie, you have a much higher opinion of Bell than I do. I've been down this road too many times before, and I know where he's going. I know why he's doing it.
But you're judging him based on your previous opinions. I mean, right now in this conversation, there's been nothing but reasonable questions being asked of the atheists.
No, it was reasonable because
you guys are making it seem like the atheists have a problem being challenged.
He said, and I quote, that we have faith in scientists. And we don't verify. That's the religious definition of faith right there. Because the religious definition of faith is believing something without evidence. And we have evidence. So that's bullshit.
Hold on.
I never made the claim
that... Let Aaron go. Let Aaron say something. He's been trying to jump in.
Okay, well, you just used the definition. He gave a definition after it was presented to him that he was conflating the two definitions. He gave a definition that had nothing to do with lack of evidence, but you conceded, everyone in the room conceded that none of you have actually physically verified the experiments. And so that was the point he was making.
So you
guys, I'm going to have to end this pretty soon because I have to go to work, but I just want to see where he's going with it. What is his point?
Okay. Well, that is the point, that atheists are exercising faith in science every day of their life.
All right, I don't
have a problem with
Actually, look, let's hold on for a second. I've been kind of listening. I understand what he's saying, and he said this before, and I actually had a Christian say this to me. Here's the clear difference. He can say faith, he can say trust, he can say whatever he wants, but we all know that he's trying to say the same thing. Well, their blind faith in the deity, anecdotal evidence, is the same thing as having...
Absolutely not.
Here's the difference.
That's not what I'm saying.
Okay, not blind faith. Your faith in our faith is comparable. Is that what you're saying?
Confident. I have confident trust that God exists. You have confident trust in science.
Okay, I think you have a different definition.
Here's the difference.
Trust is justified.
You have
so is my confidence.
anecdotal evidence. You have anecdotal evidence to support yours, and we have empirical evidence that can be refuted.
He has empirical evidence. You haven't.
Difference. That is.
He hasn't presented any evidence, so you can call it anecdotal. If he hasn't presented evidence, you can't call what he has.
If there was empirical evidence for a deity, there would be a peer-reviewed journal, and it will be verified by now. If you
ever have a discussion with Matt Bell, you know his evidence is.
Did anyone else do chemistry experiments in college? I mean.
Oh, here.
We've done experiments in related sciences.
There's two definitions of faith.
Resources.
Yeah, and I gave my definition of faith quite clearly and categorically.
Okay, so I would say that, Matthew, you have a strong belief in God or in the doctrines of a religion. Based on, a little bit, yeah.
Of course I do.
What's your empirical evidence for God?
The universe, contingent beings, objective moral values and duties. Those are all empirical facts.
What's your best one?
Yeah, but you're begging the question with all these arguments.
Yeah.
What argument? Yeah, I wasn't asked for the argument.
I've heard your argument a ton of times. You're begging the question.
Yeah, and I tried to answer it, and JDK muted me, and you failed as a moderator to prevent him doing that.
I know. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Fried, what part of the
Kalam? You're new to moderating Hangout, so I understand it.
Conclusion in the premise.
Yeah, what part? Yeah, that's a fair question actually from Aaron.
He's assuming that the universe could only come from a God in the premise.
No, I'm not. I'm not.
No, not even close.
I'm not even giving an argument yet.
Oh, God, you're gonna what? Everything that begins to exist has a cause.
Does that assume God?
It's gonna come in. Everything that begins it assumes.
It might conclude God if you let it go through its.
You know what? Hold on, I got this. Rainbows exist. 4 travels on the Bifrost, which is a rainbow to get between the 9 realms. Therefore, rainbows prove 4.
Yeah, there we go.
Right.
The thing with the Kalam is it's clearly designed so that God can be asserted.
That's an excellent.
The reason it says everything that begins to exist as a cause, it's not because the argument's trying to actually get somewhere. It's because it's left that way so that God can be inserted later.
The thing is that the cosmological arguments are.
Well, Matthew, I'm sorry if you're
sorry, JD. Just let me finish what I was going to say. The cosmological arguments actually do present a bit of a problem for a lot of. I mean, if people like Sean Carroll have to come in to argue against it, then it's not as easily dismissed as you guys, as some of the people seem to make it out to be.
It really is, because the first...
I didn't see Sean Carroll laughing at it.
When did any individual quantum of mass energy begin to exist?
Because the first premise is a bold assertion.
Well,
that's true. All premises in every argument are assertions. That's what a premise is. It's a proposition. It's a statement. It's a claim.
I just proved 4 exists.
Right, you can disprove the soundness of the Kalam by disproving one of the premises. But nobody disputes the form of it. It's perfectly logical.
If Sean Carroll is willing to engage in this argument for hours, for days, actually.
Sean Carroll also debates creationists. He has a debate schedule. He likes to talk about naturalism versus theism, and so on his stop, he also discussed with William Lane Craig. But when it comes to actual philosophy and cosmology literature, no one takes this argument seriously. I mean, the majority of philosophers are atheists. More of theoretical physicists are atheists.
Argumentum ad populum. Argumentum ad populum.
No, this is an argument from authority. All of the physicists.
An argument from authority. An argument authority.
Still talking.
But you see, the point is that
that's all we can do. All we can do is write.
I'm saying be quiet. I'm still finishing a sentence.
And I'm saying
none of their models posit a deity, and so the argument is not taken seriously by anyone who contemplates things like the origin of the universe.
Yeah.
So I mean, the thing is, Craig designs the argument and argues it. He's been spegging again. I'm still talking.
I don't care whether you're still talking or not. You won't be talking.
Craig very carefully has been trying to protect this argument from disproof for some 15 years, 20 years. And so it's not surprising that
What you won't find is someone who debates William Lane Craig or someone who is well versed in logic or argumentation or philosophy who criticizes the Kalam cosmological argument on the form of the argument to say is engaging in a fallacy. You won't find somebody saying it's begging the question. You won't find an actual philosopher saying that is an illogical form of the question. What they will do is try to disprove the premises because they realize it is in valid logical form.
And it's sound deductive.
Well, it's only sound if it's true.
Well, it's more than it sound, but it is a deductive argument.
Yeah, it's perfectly fine.
It's a deductive valid argument.
Because it also assumes that causality has any bearing on the origin of the universe, and so
And you
already
can also
that's pretty hard
introduce.
too.
You can introduce anything in for God, and the argument would be just as sound. So what's your point?
Okay.
Nope.
No, okay. Let's introduce something. Let's introduce something.
But that's actually not true about this argument. See, there's about the argument in the chart. If I can just finish my sentence. There is a lot of misconceptions in the atheist community about the cosmological arguments. They are very easily dismissed, and they shouldn't be. They actually present an intellectual debate to us, and when we just laugh at them, we're laughing at one of the better arguments from Christians.
It's not.
We end up engaging in the stupid arguments on a daily basis and dismissing the ones that actually provide a little bit of problems for us, or could provide a little bit of problems.
Yeah.
They're defining a God into existence, so I don't care how they say it.
The Kalam cosmological argument does not define any God into existence.
Do you hold the view that God is impossible?
I mean, you went through all the trouble of shutting me up, and now you're even letting me get through. Like I was saying, when did a quantum of mass energy come into existence?
Whenever it was created. Well, are you postulating? Are you proposing it came into existence from nothing?
Yeah, maybe.
So now we get the individual who wants to make that's an extraordinary claim. Extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence.
What we don't know is not a claim.
Exactly.
Quantum mass energy.
We do know. We know that from nothing. If you have nothing. Nothing cannot give you something else.
Hey Matt, have you ever seen a nothing?
Thank you. Somebody said.
All right, so how can you talk about it?
I can talk about it because it's a philosophical concept.
We're not talking about philosophy or nothing. We're talking about
comparative. Have you ever seen your thoughts?
Again, irrelevant.
Have you ever seen a monkey? Have you ever seen a multiverse? When's the last time you seen a multiverse?
He's confusing the philosophical definition of nothing.
The philosophical definition of nothing is a complete absence of any something.
If we had an honest back and forth on this, it would be far more interesting.
Honestly, I'm focused on your icon, Mr. Bababoo, and I'm just admiring that rainbow, knowing that Thor is the reason behind that.
Yes.
That is the Bifrost right there. That is proof positive using the Kalam.
That was a beautiful picture outside my window that I took.
Honestly, my faith is no longer in the Suplet and Thor right now. Using the Kalam, that rainbow exists. Yeah. The reason why it exists is because it's a Bifrost for Thor to travel between the realms. Therefore, Thor exists, and Odin and Valkyries and.
Right. At this point, it'd be kind of nice if there were atheists around who wouldn't have me carry my hair out trying to actually get out anything. Because, for fuck's sake, I mean, does anyone even let me talk?
Well, at this point, I actually have to go to work, so I'm going to end this live part of the Hangout. But everyone can stick around for the unlive part of the Hangout.
Sorry, Nadia. Tanya got kind of run over there, too, when we jumped on Bell's train. So, it happens.
And there's a reason.